Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, but most of Flowing Water City's residents still vigorously resisted. Zhaofu did not say anything and brought the 2 city lord seals to the city halls. Zhaofu first chose to conquer Flowing Water City. It was a pity that it had just been relocated, so he barely obtained anything. There were no achievement points, war points, and experience point. There was only some fate, which was even less than a normal system main cities. It seemed that cities could not be rashly moved about. Following this, Zhaofu went to Fragrant Moon City's City Hall and chose to conquer and relocate it. System announcement. Congratulations, you have conquered a system main city and obtained 5,000 achievement points. System announcement. Because you're a legatee, you have obtained a large amount of this region's fate. System announcement. You have relocated a system main city and obtained 860,000 experience point. System announcement. Congratulations, you have obtained 200 war points. System announcement. Your Chaotic World Stone Steel has reached level 4 and can exchange epic rank items. Zhaofu looked through these system announcements and did not pay them much mind, but following this, he received 3 more system announcements that he did care about. The first was a region system announcement. This region's 2 Vietnamese system main cities have been conquered, so this region will no longer spawn Vietnamese players unless a Vietnamese system main city is re-established. The second was a nation system announcement, which all Chinese and Vietnamese players could hear. Trinam region has been conquered by China, and Vietnam's collective fate has been weakened while China's collective fate has increased. The third was a world system announcement. The requirements for unlocking boundary medallions have been fulfilled. From today onwards, boundary medallions will appear all over the world, and they will transport one to a boundary region. The 3 system announcements were quite important. The first system announcement told everyone in the region that Vietnamese players would no longer be spawning here, meaning that this region now belonged to China. Zhaofu had actually expected such a thing. Relocating 4 system main cities before had resulted in a similar system announcement, but that one had been a nation system announcement that all of China could hear. This system announcement meant that all of the remaining Vietnamese people in this region were in an incredibly weak position, and they could only be bullied by the Chinese side. After all, as the Vietnamese players died, there would be less and less of them. How could they fight against China? The Vietnamese players and indigenous residents in the wilderness would lead difficult lives from now on. 502 Incomparable Battles. The second system announcement was even more important than the previous one because it concerned the collective fate of a nation. When this system announcement sounded out, all Chinese and Vietnamese players were greatly shocked. From the beginning, they had all paid close attention to this battle, so they had quickly found out that the Vietnamese side had lost. This was not very surprising, as they were facing Great Kin. With Great Kin's mighty power and terrifying methods, it had almost caused the destruction of the Heaven Awakened world, so how could ordinary people be a match for it? As such, it was not a big surprise that Great Kin had won. However, what shocked them was that destroying the 2 Vietnamese system main cities would increase a nation's collective fate. Nonetheless, after they thought about it, they understood, there was a correlation between territory and fate, and now that this region belonged to China, the fate from that region would belong to China. This was incredibly good for the Chinese side. More fate meant better opportunities, better luck, and more power. After all, the strength or weakness of a nation's fate determined its direction. When this system announcement sounded out, the Vietnamese players continuously cursed at Great Kin for being ruthless and savage, while the Chinese side was delighted and praised Great Kin for being mighty and bringing glory to China. The third system announcement was about the boundary medallions. No one knew how many boundary medallions there would be. If there were many of them, people would swarm to the boundary regions, causing the chaotic boundary regions to become even more bloody and cruel. Zhaofu felt that there probably were not many boundary medallions, but there wouldn't be too few either. If there were too many, massive battles between nations would erupt when it was not time yet. After all, it would be more convenient after the paths between regions were opened up. Zhaofu felt that the boundary medallions foreshadowed the hatred between nations, and there would be incomparable battles between nations in the future. As such, there probably were not just a few boundary medallions either. The appearance of boundary medallions made it difficult for Great Kin to continue to act against boundary regions. Zhao Fu thought about it and did not plan to continue attacking other boundary regions. After putting away Flowing Water City and Fragrant Moon City's city creation stones, the battles inside the city had more or less finished, and most of the Vietnamese people had been killed. There was also a small portion of Vietnamese people who broke through and escaped while the Chinese side had been pillaging. There were roughly 80,000 to 90,000 Vietnamese people who had escaped, but they would not be able much of a threat in the future, so no one paid much attention to them. There were roughly 400,000 or so injuries and casualties on the Chinese side, which was quite good. After all, the Vietnamese side also had more than 2 million players, so suffering such a relatively small loss was incredibly good. Apart from losing some skeletons, Great Kin did not suffer many injuries or casualties. After all, Great Kin's soldiers had not participated in a lot of direct fighting, and most of that had been done by players. There were 320,000 people who surrendered. 270,000 were from Fragrant Moon City while only 50,000 were from Flowing Water City. The others either fought to the death or escaped with the Vietnamese players. The Chinese players who had survived were ecstatic, as they had made great gains. Just the equipment and coins that they picked up were enough to make them rich. According to their agreement, all of the Vietnamese resources, such as mines, forests, and medicinal gardens, were given to the Chinese system main cities. Even though they had received massive benefits, the two Chinese city lords couldn't feel happy. Seeing Great Kin obtain so many people as well as 2 city lord seals, its power had once again greatly increased, and they felt even more afraid of Great Kin. Luckily, Great Kin had immediately left afterward, allowing the 2 city lords to let out a sigh of relief. The battle had finally concluded. After returning to Great Kin, Zhao Fu re-established the 2 Vietnamese system main cities and gave Flowing Water City's city lord seal to Zhang Han. Zhang Han was still only SS grade because Zhao Fu had not found any other legatees recently. It was not easy to find the corpses of historical generals, so Zhang Han was still SS grade and did not have a main general star yet. However, Great Kin already had 2 S-grade corpses, and it was still lacking 1 SS and 1 S-grade corpse to fuse together a SSS grade innate talent blood crystal. As for Fragrant Moon City's city lord seal, Zhao Fu planned to give it to Xian Ru. She would always be by his side in the future, and giving her a city lord seal would increase her battle potential. Xian Ru had powerful yin-yang techniques, which were mysterious and useful. With the power from a city lord seal, her yin-yang techniques would definitely become more terrifying, and they could be of great use in key moments. Xian Ru felt quite surprised, as she had never expected Zhao Fu to give her a city lord seal. However, to be valued so highly by Zhao Fu, Xian Ru felt quite happy, and she accepted the city lord seal after thanking him. None of Zhao Fu's generals had any objections to giving the city lord seal to Xian Ru because they supported Zhao Fu's decisions. Only Zhao Jian and Zhang De were a bit disappointed. After all, Zhang Han was Great Kin's final historical general, and even though there were historical generals from the surrendered states who had not joined for very long, Zhao Fu would not give something as important as a city lord seal to them. If it wasn't for Xian Ru, one of them would have obtained the city lord seal, boosting them to be one of the most important and powerful figures in Great Kin. Even though they were a bit disappointed, both people could understand Zhao Fu's decision. With Great Kin's strength, there would be more and more city lord seals in the future, so they didn't have to be too disappointed as they would receive one sooner or later. These 2 system main cities were both Vietnamese system main cities, but they could still have Chinese city lords. Even though they belonged to different nations, they were still of the same race. However, after a Chinese city lord was instated and the majority of the residents were Chinese, the system main cities would only spawn Chinese indigenous residents. The fewer cities that a race had, the less its population would be. Without any cities, a race would die out completely. After taking care of these matters, Zhao Fu dismissed the generals before turning to Xian Ru and saying, "Bring them in." Xian Ru lightly smiled and nodded before turning to the people beside her, who quickly went out. Soon, 5 women were brought into the hall. These 5 women were all very pretty, and they had snow-white skin and graceful figures. Their demeanors were quite extraordinary, and they could be said to be rarely seen beauties. After the 5 women were brought in, their gazes were either filled with hatred, anger, or fear. One of them was a person Zhao Fu had seen not too long ago. 503 no right to refuse. She was, of course, Fragrant Moon City's city lord, Danzō. If it wasn't for her phoenix chi, Xian Ru would not have asked Zhao Fu to stop, and he would have killed her. As a city lord, the fate that Danzō possessed was more powerful than ordinary families because she controlled at least a quarter of a region's fate. Because she was a woman, this was the same for her phoenix chi, so she would be able to provide a large amount of Phoenix Chi for Great Kin. After Zhaofu destroyed Fragrant Moon City, took her city lord seal and killed her residents. She obviously looked at Zhaofu hatefully. Apart from Danzō, there was also one of Fragrant Moon City's generals, whose name was Fu King. She looked both a bit feminine and masculine, and she also looked quite pretty. Her body was tall and slim, and she had short hair and a relatively flat chest. She also furiously glared at Zhaofu because he dared to treat her city lord in such a manner. The third woman was a player called Hueco, a star in Vietnam. She was quite famous and was naturally quite beautiful, and she also had a slim figure. She had been forced to eat a reality fruit already, so her real body was now within the Heaven Awakened world. The remaining two women were direct descendants from large Vietnamese families, and they were called Yi Bangsu and Yang 11. Their looks were quite delicate, and they had willowy figures and noble auras. They were both players who had also eaten reality fruits. These three people looked at Zhaofu in fear because their lives were completely within Zhaofu's control. He could do whatever he wanted to them. Back when he had attacked Heavenstone City, Zhaofu had wanted to capture some women from the large families to provide Phoenix Chi for Great Kin. He had not forgotten what those large families had done to Great Kin, so he would not show any mercy to them. It was a pity that he had used most of the players to attack Heavenstone City, so it would not have been good to then capture some of them afterward. However, this time, things were different. Even though he had used players to attack the two Vietnamese system main cities, these people were instead the enemy, so Great Kin could openly capture women with Phoenix Chi. However, there were very few women with Phoenix Chi, only a few of them out of the hundreds of thousands of people. Not including Danzō and Fu King, they had only found 3 people. "What do you want with us?" Danzō asked vehemently as she coldly looked at Zhaofu. Zhaofu slightly frowned and ignored her. He stretched out his hand, and Xianru handed 5 pieces of paper to Zhaofu. Because Zhaofu had wanted to see how the Emperor Phoenix statue absorbed Phoenix Chi, Zhaofu personally took the 2 women to the Heaven Prayer platform last time. Now that he had seen it, there was no need to go all the way there. He could give them titles as imperial concubines anywhere. Zhaofu opened his hand, and a formless energy lifted the 5 pieces of paper into the air. Zhaofu then took out the imperial ruler's seal and stamped it on the 5 pieces of paper. The 5 ordinary pieces of paper started to give off a golden light and an aura of holiness and might. "We, Great Kin's legatee, the future ruler of the Great Kin Empire, confer on the 5 of you the title Imperial Concubine of Great Kin." Danzō's face fell. She now knew why Zhaofu had spared her. It was to make her his woman. However, how could Danzō agree? Zhaofu had just destroyed Fragrant Moon City, killed countless residents, and executed Ho Ming, who she had had a good relationship with. "I refuse. I won't become your woman. You're better off killing me," Danzō said resolutely. Seeing this, Fu King also said, "I refuse as well. I won't become my enemy's woman." The 3 other women reacted completely differently. Hueco looked quite delighted. Even though she was a star in Vietnam and seemed incredibly rich and popular, she did not have any real power. The fact that the Heaven Awakened world would devour the real world was no longer a secret, and only some naive ordinary people still did not know about this. Hueco wanted to find a powerful backer, and Great Kin was the best choice. With Great Kin's power, she would be able to obtain everything that she wanted. "Your Majesty, I'm willing to be your concubine. I'm also a virgin, and I'll do my best to serve your Majesty and fulfill all of your desires." Hueco's face was a bit red, but she still spoke with a confident smile on her face. She knew that any man would want a virgin, so perhaps Great Kin would want her virgin body. Yi Bangsu and Yang 11 hesitated. As women from large families, they did not care too much about such a thing, as their main role was to form marriage alliances for their families. Even if they refused, they had to marry whoever their families chose for them. Now that their lives were in his hands, they could not resist, so they might as well agree. Perhaps that would allow them to have better lives, and they might even be able to help their families. "Your Majesty, we are also willing to become your concubines," the 2 women said as they paid their respects to Zhaofu. Fu King coldly harumphed, despising the 3 women for lusting after wealth and power and fearing death. Zhaofu ignored the 5 women's words and flicked his hand, and the 5 pieces of paper turned into 5 golden rays of light that shot into the 5 people's bodies. Zhaofu looked at them calmly and said, "You have no right to refuse." As the 5 golden rays of light shot into their bodies trembled, and they felt a formless power descend into them. This was Great Kin's fate, and as imperial concubines, they obtained a large amount of fate. At the same time, a golden aura rose up from their bodies, floated towards the Heaven Prayer platform, and entered the Emperor Phoenix statue. The 5 people's Phoenix Chi caused the Emperor Phoenix statue to look even more real, and it became even more powerful. "Humphrey." Danzō could feel the changes in her body, and she could tell that she had indeed become Zhao Fu's concubine. However, she coldly harumphed and grabbed her hairpin, aiming it at her neck. Even though her cultivation had been sealed and her spatial ring taken, she still had all of the accessories on her body. Indeed, I can't resist, but I'd rather die than be your woman. Seeing this, Fu King took out a small blade and also aimed it at her neck, saying, "This subordinate is willing to die with the city lord, I'll never submit to this person." Just as they were about to slit their own throats, a massive and terrifying aura burst forth, causing the atmosphere within the hall to freeze. A formless energy instantly locked down the two women. The other people fearfully looked at Zhao Fu, whose calm face was now incredibly cold. Everyone could feel his anger, and none of them dared to make a sound. "You can't try that again, but if you do, I'll slaughter everyone in Fragrant Moon City. I'll make sure everyone close to you will wish they were dead." Zhao Fu's voice, filled with killing intent, filled the hall. 504 Resist death. Suddenly, the power locking down the two people disappeared, but Danzō and Fu King did not dare to act. They were thinking about Fragrant Moon City's residents and those close to them. Feeling Zhao Fu's killing intent and given his status as a king, he would definitely carry out what he said. As such, if they really did kill themselves, Fragrant Moon City's people would die with them, and those close to them would have an even worse fate. They did dare to die, but because they had to think about Fragrant Moon City's people, they both stopped. Zhao Fu's blood-red eyes icily looked at them. No one in Great Ken had ever dared to disobey him like this and resist death. He had wanted to treat them well, but since they were like this, he decided otherwise. In that instant, Zhao Fu felt incredibly furious and decided to take out his anger on them. "What? You're not going to continue?" Zhao Fu's cold voice once again sounded out. Danzō furiously yelled, "You're too shameless, you're using Fragrant Moon City's residents to threaten us." Zhao Fu coldly harumphed and ignored her words as he said icily, "Take off your clothes." The only people in the hall were Zhao Fu, the 5 women, Xianru, and some female attendants. Hearing these words, they all felt quite surprised. Hearing this, Danzō and Fu King felt incredibly angry and almost slit their throats. "I said take your clothes off," Zhao Fu said with an even more severe tone, and his voice became even colder. He was filled with killing intent as he looked at the two women. Under Zhao Fu's pressure, Danzō and Fu King had given up on dying, but how could they do something so humiliating? "Guards!" Zhao Fu shouted. Danzō and Fu King's expressions fell, knowing what Zhao Fu was planning, so they hurriedly called out, "All right. I'll take them off." Danzō put down her hairpin and slowly took off her green dress, while Fu King, feeling humiliated, also angrily took off her armor. As their clothes fell, their tears also dripped down. Finally, they finished taking off all of their clothes and two pristine, white bodies appeared in the hall. The two women lowered their heads in humiliation with one hand covering their breasts and one hand covering their lower bodies. "Take your hands away." Zhao Fu's voice once again sounded out. By the side, Xianru felt that Zhao Fu was going a bit too far, but seeing how angry he looked, she lowered her head and did not dare to say anything. Danzō and Fu King gritted their teeth and slowly moved their hands away, revealing their bodies entirely to Zhao Fu. Those delicate breasts, slim waists, and lower bodies were now exposed. Zhao Fu stood up and walked over to Danzō and Fu King. He stretched out his hands and lifted up their chins, making them look up. Both of their eyes were completely red, and tears continuously streamed down their beautiful faces as their cheeks became red. They had never been naked in front of so many people before. Even though Zhao Fu raised her chin, Danzō felt quite humiliated and furious, and she looked away, not meeting his eyes. On the other hand, Fu King glared at Zhao Fu in anger as if she hated Zhao Fu to her bones. Just as both women thought that Zhao Fu was going to do something to them in that hall, Zhao Fu coldly harumphed and left. Xianru followed behind Zhao Fu and also left with him. Everyone present let out a sigh of relief. As a king, Zhao Fu's anger was something that everyone feared. Danzō and Fu King stemmed their tears and quickly put on their clothes before a few female attendants took them to a courtyard prepared for them. There, they met Miao Qiang and Bai Yigan. Seeing that another 5 women had been brought here, the two women sighed. They didn't understand why Zhao Fu had made them concubines. After thinking about it for a long time, they decided to just accept their fate. Since the situation was like this, they were powerless to retaliate. However, even though they had officially become Great Ken Legatee's women, they didn't know why he had never touched them before. They were quite confident in their looks, so they didn't know why Great Ken's legatee never came. Afterward, they thought of that phoenix statue and realized that it was possible that Great Ken's legatee was not interested in them and had instead made them concubines because he was using them for something. The two women didn't want to think about such a thing. They would rather have Great Kin's legatee be interested in their bodies and toy around with them, because then they would at least be women. Staying here, they seem to have lost the right to be a person, and they would be forever imprisoned here, suffering boundless loneliness and boredom until their lives ended. They didn't want such a thing to happen. As such, they would be happy if Great Kin's legatee would do something to them so that they would at least be treated as women and not just objects put into storage. Now, seeing another 5 women be brought in, even though they didn't know what had happened outside, the appearance of these 5 women meant that their chances were even lower. This also somewhat confirmed what they had been guessing, causing their gazes to become dim. Xiaofu was currently sitting cross-legged beside a small creek as he fished in silence. Without realizing it, he had started to enjoy fishing, as it could help him calm his heart. At the same time, Xiaofu's cultivation was also rapidly progressing. "Your Majesty, you're not angry anymore, right?" Beside him, Xianru slightly smiled. In response, Xiaofu nodded. "Then is your Majesty planning to take down that 3rd objective?" Xianru asked caringly. Xiaofu thought about it but shook his head and said, "It's best to leave the 3rd objective for now. Facing 3 system main cities is still a bit difficult, so let's fulfill the requirements to upgrade to a great city first." The requirements for upgrading to a great city were 3 basic cities, 6 basic towns, and Xiaofu already had 2 basic cities and 4 basic towns. He still lacked 1 basic city and 2 small towns. Even though Great Kin already had 7 system main cities, which were all great cities, the requirements were basic cities and basic towns. However, this would make it easier when Great Kin was upgrading into a capital city, as that required 3 great cities, 6 basic cities, and 9 basic towns. 505 Ancient Poison. After hearing Xiaofu's reply, Xianru respectfully stood by his side and accompanied Xiaofu as he fished. A while later, Xiaofu felt that he had fished enough and called over Go Binglan and Wang Ergu, and he ordered them to collect information on basic towns and basic cities. Great Kin would need many basic towns and basic cities to level up, while there were system main cities in every region, so there was no need to worry about great cities. After becoming a capital city, Great Kin's next goal would be to become a royal city. Only with a royal city would Xiaofu be able to re-establish Great Kin as a nation. Royal cities were the basic requirement of a nation. However, Great Kin was still only an intermediate city, so it was still far off from becoming a royal city. Moreover, after becoming a great city, it was not split into 3 substages of basic, intermediate, and advanced but 5 substages. A level 1 great city was equivalent to a system main city, and after becoming a level 5 great city, it would be able to level up into a capital city. Capital cities were split into 6 substages, and above them were royal cities. As such, even though it didn't seem like the restoration of Great Kin was too far away, there was still a great distance that they had to cover. They would also need countless basic towns, basic cities, and great cities to fulfill the various requirements. This made sense, as only by having countless cities would one be able to call oneself a nation. It would be best to have as many basic towns and basic cities as possible, as they would definitely be of use in the future. Wang Ergu and Go Binglan heeded Xiaofu's orders and quickly went to look for information on basic towns and basic cities nearby. Xiaofu had his soldiers rest for a day as they would be going out to fight the next day. His goal was to control everything within 10,000 kilometers as soon as possible in order to increase Great Kin's strength and start making a move against the Forest of Horrors. Within another region, CG and Fuxi's descendant went to the city hall of a system main city, which was filled with people. Most of the people there looked like physicians and were holding medicinal boxes, and some of them held strips of canvas with blessings on them. These people looked like total frauds. These physicians were all gathered here because the city lord's wife was gravely ill and needed immediate treatment. The city lord's wife's illness was not simple at all. Her body was blistering hot, and she was continuously sweating. Her skin seemed as if there were countless bugs crawling around on it, making it seem quite terrifying. Normally, the city lord's power would have been enough to heal her, but because nothing seemed to be working, he had called in many physicians. This was already the 6th day that the city lord's wife had been sick, and none of the physicians had been able to do anything about the illness. Seeing his wife grow weaker day by day, the city lord felt incredibly pained and worried, and he could only offer a great reward for anyone who could cure her. The tens of thousands of gold coins became hundreds of thousands of gold coins. By the 6th day, the city lord was desperate enough to promise that anyone who could cure his wife would be given half of the city. The physicians came into the room to check on his wife, and the truly skilled physicians could only sigh and shake their heads, signaling that there was nothing that they could do. Some fake physicians wanted to just earn some easy money, so they gave out some useless prescriptions. Of course, the city lord had people carefully check over those prescriptions. He knew that there would definitely be some fake physicians among them, and if his wife took their medicine, she might get even worse. As such, He had the prescription strictly checked to prevent his wife's illness from becoming even worse. After finding a heap of useless prescriptions, the city lord became infuriated and ordered the fake physicians who had given those prescriptions to be put in the dungeon. The city lord had held onto a trace of hope because he had invited so many physicians, perhaps one of them could save his wife. However, none of them had been able to do so. At that moment, CG walked in with some people and said with a confident smile, "City lord, I have a way to save your wife." Seeing CG, the city lord's expression became serious, as he recognized that CG was a dynasty's legatee. This was because CG did not hide his aura, so the city lord was able to tell CG's status at a glance. Every city lord treated dynasty legatees with a great amount of respect. Hearing his words, the city lord felt quite delighted and quickly asked, "Are you really able to?" CG nodded earnestly before saying, "I can definitely save your wife, but I have a condition." Hearing this, the city lord's expression became serious. This person's demand definitely wouldn't be simple, but for his beloved wife, the city lord still asked, "What do you want?" CG did not hide his goal and raised his head as he replied, "I want you to join Great Zaya. Don't worry. Great Zaya will not mistreat you. Moreover, Great Zaya is the true ruler of China." Indeed, it was something that was not simple at all. He wanted him to submit to Great Zaya. This caused the city lord to hesitate, and he could not make a decision for a while. "City lord. Madam's illness is getting worse." A female attendant ran over and called out. This caused the city lord's face to fall, and he finally made a decision, saying, "All right, as long as you can save my wife, I'll submit to you." CG nodded and brought Fuxi's descendant to where the city lord's wife was, and he had Fuxi's descendant check up on the city lord's wife. Following this, Fuxi's descendant took out a pearl-white medicinal pill and fed it to the woman on the bed. In just a few moments, the woman's illness became better, and her body was no longer as hot. Her skin also returned to normal. Seeing this, the city lord felt incredibly delighted and came to the bed to check up on his wife. Upon checking, he immediately felt that her body had become much better. 3 days later, the woman's illness was completely cured, but she was just a bit weak. After a few days, she would make a full recovery. Just as he had promised, the city lord joined Great Zaya. With the system main city joining, Great Zaya became much more powerful. This was especially so after obtaining the 100,000 Stage 1 soldiers from the system main city, which greatly increased its battle power. Great Kin had obtained the heaven and earth refining formation, giving them blood god pills that raised cultivation and grade orbs that raised grades. Because of this, Great Kin had 200,000 or so Stage 1 soldiers, while other legatees only had tens of thousands of Stage 1 soldiers. Now that Great Zaya had suddenly obtained 100,000 Stage 1 soldiers, its force became much more powerful. In actuality, this was something that Great Zaya had planned. The city lord's wife was until but poisoned, and she had been poisoned by an ancient poison that Great Zaya's forces had found in a historical remnant. This was why CG had been so confident. Even though using poison was a bit shameless, from the beginning of China's history, even though many of the emperors could be said to be wise rulers or enlightened lieges, none of them were good people. After all, truly good people would be unable to establish a mighty empire. As the saying went, a great man has to be ruthless, and that was the case in a dog-eat-dog world. 506 Wind Dragon Lord Chapter 507, Wind Dragon Lord. Back at Great Kin, Zhaofu stood in front of 10 or so wooden cages, in which there were 10 or so wild beasts. There were wolves, boars, bears, snakes, and other animals. These animals all had a king title, and Great Kin had been catching such animals because the king's crown needed king's aura, which could be accumulated bit by bit from such creatures. Zhaofu took out the king's crown and 10 or so black sword lights shot out into those animals' heads. The animals bellowed and roared, immediately dying, and 10 or so traces of a golden aura rose out of their bodies and floated into the king's crown. Zhaofu sensed the king's crown's power after devouring that king's aura, and he smiled. Next, Zhaofu decided to take care of internal affairs. Before, Zhaofu had planned for Great Kin to develop like system main cities, and he wanted residents to start contributing to the cities as much as possible. First, anyone who worked for Great Kin would have a steady wage, whether it was a soldier or an ordinary resident. Of course, the point of giving out money was to raise the economy, or else it would lose its worth. Zhaofu greatly encouraged the development of Great Kin's businesses, and this was in both external and internal trade. Zhaofu allowed residents to set up their own shops on almost every street. There were restaurants, tailor shops, and grocery stores, and he also allowed them to set up small stalls or carts as well. These developments would cause the residents' quality of living to become higher, and their loyalty to Great Kin would also become higher. Under Great Kin's encouragements, many people found opportunities. These included elves, gnomes, and ratfolk. All sorts of races opened shops, causing Great Ken to become quite lively. Now that they were encouraging trade and giving wages, they also started taking taxes. After all, a nation's wealth came from taxes, and this was essential. Taxes could provide a nation with enormous fortune, but if they were not controlled well, they could endanger a nation. Taxes that were too heavy could result in rebellions, so they had to establish a good system. Seeing the Great Ken city become more and more lively, Zhaofu smiled. A few days later, a pillar of black light shot into the air as Great Ken leveled up into an advanced city. Great Ken had been only a bit away from leveling up, and taking down Fragrant Moon City had provided a large amount of experience point. As they continued to conquer villages and towns in the wilderness, they finally accumulated enough experience point to level up the Great Ken City. Village name, Great Ken City, Legendary, Level, Advanced, 1,000 out of 6,100,000, Village area, 2,600 square kilometers. Village territory, 101,800 square kilometers. Residents, 1,292,950 out of 3,240,000. Military, 212,640 out of 832,000. Popular support, 85. Village special stats, territory crop output plus 140%, territory crop growing time minus 140%, population limit plus 100%, residence stats can randomly plus 10, soldiers stats plus 11%, population attraction plus 120%, chance of attracting higher grade population plus 120%. Subsidiary village limit, 4,800. Subordinate villages, Logue Village, Jean Village, Drun Village, Lee Family Village, Wolf Village, Ferocious Tiger Village. Zhaofu took a look at the Great Ken City's stats. The Great Ken City was now an advanced city, and the next level was Great City. As such, they had to quickly fulfill all of the requirements so that all they would need would be experience point. After gathering information on surrounding basic cities and basic towns, they would immediately act. Boom. Just as Zhaofu was leaving the hall, a massive explosion sounded out, and a gale blew past. Countless trees trembled, and it was as if they were going to be ripped out of the ground. Many large rocks were also blown into the sky. After that massive gale, the air was filled with dust. Seeing this, Zhaofu's pupils constricted, and he looked in the direction of Holy Light City. Just what was going on? Roar. A massive dragon's roar then sounded out, and Zhaofu could tell from its roar that it was not an Asian dragon but a Western dragon. This was because Asian dragons' roars were more like a bellow while Western dragons' roars were more screech-like. As Zhaofu looked over, a hooded assassin came over and reported, "Your Majesty, there's an emergency. A wind dragon is attacking Holy Light City." Hearing this, Zhaofu immediately headed to Holy Light City. As soon as he stepped into Holy Light City, massive gusts of wind buffeted him, which was quite painful. As such, Zhaofu activated his king's domain to resist the wind. At that moment, Zhaofu saw the condition of Holy Light City. Many houses had been blown over, and rocks and logs filled the sky. The residents were all huddled within buildings, while players were all escaping to other system main cities. The scene was incredibly chaotic. There was a massive wind dragon that had a wingspan of 1,000 meters in the sky, and it had azure scales, a lizard-like head, and 2 long horns. Its entire body gave off a powerful wind attribute energy. This was not an ordinary wind dragon but the lord of the region. Zhaofu knew the lord of the Forest of Horrors, which was a 6-eyed flood dragon. In that case, this wind dragon lord was definitely from another region. However, why was the lord monster of another region attacking the Forest of Horrors Holy Light City? Zhaofu looked up at the wind dragon lord and saw it furiously flapping its wings, sending out gigantic wind blades. The wind dragon lord was fighting with a young woman in white. She was most likely the city lord of Holy Light City. "Return my child to me, you thief. Otherwise, I'll annihilate your city," the wind dragon lord said, her voice the voice of a mature woman. Zhaofu immediately thought about Holy Light City buying the wind dragon egg at that auction a few months ago. This was probably the mother of that egg. No wonder this was happening. Luckily, Zhaofu had not been able to buy that egg. Even a system main city would find it difficult to defend, and this would be even more so for him. The woman in white in the air hesitated. Holy Light City had spent a great amount of money to buy that wind dragon egg, and they had never expected such a thing to happen. However, seeing the destruction that the wind dragon lord was causing, the woman in white sighed and replied, "I can give you the egg, but you have to stop." Hearing the woman in white's words, the wind dragon lord stopped attacking and looked at the young woman, saying, "All right. Return my child to me." Seeing that the wind dragon lord had stopped attacking, the woman in white let out a slight sigh of relief and took out an azure-colored egg from within her spatial ring. She then threw it up and guided it with her power to the wind dragon lord. Zhaofu wanted to get involved because attacking Holy Light City would be quite easy with a wind dragon here. However, they were too close and could both protect the dragon egg, so Zhao Fu did not have an opportunity to do so. 507 Extortion. While Zhao Fu was considering whether or not to act, the dragon egg was covered by a layer of azure light before instantly disappearing. It turned out that the Wind Dragon Lord had a very big spatial ring on one of its claws. After the Wind Dragon Lord took the egg, the woman and Zhao Fu both thought that the matter was over, but the Wind Dragon Lord once again beat its wings and caused massive gusts of wind. "You've returned my child, but what are you going to do as compensation for stealing my child?" "I want 5 million gold coins, or I won't spare you," the Wind Dragon Lord said domineeringly. All dragons love to collect treasures, but Western dragons were especially greedy, and they collected everything of value, even coins. They especially liked golden coins. Even though the Wind Dragon Lord didn't know who had stolen the egg, since it had ended up in this city, she wanted to take revenge on this city and unleash its anger on it. In order to find this egg, she had spent a great deal of time and effort, so how could she just drop matters like this? Even if Holy Light City gave up everything of value within it, she would still savagely attack it until she no longer felt as furious. This caused the woman in white to look quite displeased. 5 million gold coins was an astronomical sum, and she only had 1 million gold coins on her. However, for the safety of Holy Light City, the woman in white could only take a step back and say, "I only have 1 million gold coins. I can give them all to you, but let's leave this matter at that." The woman in white decided to be tougher. She was afraid that the Wind Dragon Lord would continue pushing and demand more and more, so she made her stance clear. However, the Wind Dragon Lord did not appreciate this, and it unleashed a few more gusts of berserk wind before saying, "It's fine if you don't have enough money, take out everything of value in this city." "Absolutely not." The woman in white immediately refused. Hearing her words, the Wind Dragon Lord started to attack again. She opened her mouth and unleashed a gigantic pillar of wind, and the woman in white was forced to counterattack. As such, the battle between them once again began. Massive explosions sounded out in the sky, and gusts of wind and sword lights shot everywhere, leaving deep marks in the ground and sending out terrifying shock waves. The heavens and the earth seemed to dim, and all creatures ran about in terror. A trace of a smile appeared on Zhao Fu's face as he immediately returned to the Great Qin City and gathered the army. This was the best time to move against Holy Light City. Before, Zhao Fu had wanted to destroy 3 system main cities in one go, but he had been worried about the retaliation from players. After all, if the 3 system main cities were all destroyed, they would have nowhere to go. Even if they were afraid of him, they would still resist. Moreover, Zhao Fu was worried if the 3 system main cities allied together, if he attacked one of them, perhaps the other 2 would send reinforcements. This meant that Great Qin might have to face 300,000 Stage 1 soldiers, and even though Great Qin had 450,000 soldiers, it did not have a great advantage over 300,000 Stage 1 soldiers. As such, Zhao Fu did not want to attack the Forest of Horrors too early. However, things were different now. If he used the Wind Dragon Lord, Great Qin would be able to quickly take down Holy Light City. They would have to set up an isolation barrier so that even if the other 2 system main cities tried to help, they would have to run. Another thing was that most of the players had run to the other system main cities, and without those obstacles, it would be even easier for Great Qin to take down Holy Light City. If they could conquer Holy Light City, taking down the 2 other system main cities would be much easier as well. Great Qin's soldiers quickly made their preparations, and in order to take precautions, Zhao Fu also brought with them the 30,000 skeleton mages and 150,000 skeletons. Their force of 600,000 soldiers now set off towards Holy Light City. The battle at Holy Light City was becoming more and more intense. The Wind Dragon Lord roared, and its body spun as a vortex gradually formed. Countless dark clouds gathered, and the vortex became a gigantic tornado. Rumble. The tornado started to move, giving off a massive sound as the ground began to crack. Everything around it, including boulders and trees, were sucked into it, and everything within 10,000 kilometers was affected. It was as if it was an apocalyptic disaster. Seeing this, the woman in white's expression became serious, and she unleashed the full power of her City Lord seal. A white pillar of light descended from the sky, and within it, the woman in white looked incredibly holy. A gigantic white ring appeared in the sky, giving off a bright white light that dyed the entire sky white. Pure white feathers floated down from the sky, and a heavenly melody could be heard in the surroundings. A pair of white wings slowly spread on the woman in white's back, and immediately, she gave off a shocking holy light power. At that moment, she also slowly raised her white sword. The enormous tornado, bringing with it immense power, arrived in front of the woman in white, and that terrifying might was enough to make people's souls tremble. However, the woman in white did not show any fear, and she slashed down heavily with her sword. Boom! A massive explosion rang out as the woman in white slashed out a white sword light, which was blinding to the point that the entire world seemed to turn white. Bang! The white sword light collided with a tornado, resulting in a massive explosion. Both of them held immense power, but the white sword light was a bit more powerful and destroyed the tornado, reducing it into countless berserk gusts of wind. However, at that moment, the Wind Dragon Lord, who was within the tornado, suddenly attacked again, whipping its tail towards the woman in white and sending her flying. The Wind Dragon Lord chased after her, preparing to once again attack, but the woman in white's eyes became cold. She pointed with her sword, causing a white sword light to suddenly shoot out. The white sword light easily tore into the Wind Dragon Lord's body, creating a large gash and causing a lot of blood to spill out. The Wind Dragon Lord howled in pain before retreating backward in the air. The two of them once again faced off against each other, and the Wind Dragon Lord felt quite surprised that the woman in white was so powerful. In response, the woman in white looked at the Wind Dragon seriously, not daring to relax at all. Rumble. Suddenly, a massive black flood that gave off a terrifying aura swarmed over, and the two of them looked toward the black flood in surprise. Zhaofu came above Holy Light City and slightly smiled as he said, "Wind Dragon Lord, I can help you take down this city and give you everything of value, but I want the city creation stone." 508 times sorry, the Wind Dragon Lord agreed. Currently, they were in a stalemate, so if she could obtain this human's help, she would be able to destroy this city. When that time came, everything inside the city would belong to her, so she was naturally quite happy. She would be able to take revenge and obtain a large amount of wealth. How could she refuse such a thing? However, the human said that he wanted the city creation stone, which was an incredibly precious treasure, and this was especially so for system main cities. The Wind Dragon Lord thought about it and decided to pretend to cooperate with him for now before taking the city creation stone at the end. "Human, as long as you help me, I'll give you massive benefits," the Wind Dragon Lord said as she inwardly laughed, pretending to seem incredibly earnest. Zhaofu agreed, but he also had his own hidden schemes as well. Even though he wasn't sure what the Wind Dragon Lord was thinking, he wasn't thinking of sparing her. This was because right now, only Zhaofu had revealed himself, while the 9 other city lords hid close by. When the Wind Dragon Lord and Woman in White were both heavily injured, they would attack together and take down both of them. Killing a Wind Dragon Lord like this would give incredibly good rewards, and he would see if he could get the Woman in White to submit. Facing the scene in front of her, the Woman in White's expression did not change much, but she looked at Zhaofu. In front of her was the dynasty legatee who they had lived in fear of for a long time, and now she had finally seen him. Zhaofu faced the Woman in White's gaze and felt a bit guilty. After all, Great Qin had relied on Holy Light City during its early development, and now that they were going to destroy it, he couldn't help but feel a bit sad. However, Zhaofu's emotions quickly became resolute, and he could only say, "I'm sorry." Surprisingly, the Woman in White nodded and did not seem angry. It was most likely because she had expected this day for a long time. Zhaofu gave the order to attack the city, and the Wind Dragon Lord started to attack the Woman in White as well so that Zhaofu could easily join the fight. As Great Qin started to move, the 2 other system main cities also received news about this and quickly started to act as well. Not only did they gather their military forces, but they also started to give out lots of quests. Many people who had nothing to do saw the quests and immediately joined, but none of them knew that they were going to attack Great Qin. Through what Su Yan had told them in the past, many of the large families knew that Great Qin was in the Forest of Horrors. Many spies had also confirmed this, and only Great Qin would dare to attack a system main city. In order to attract more people to join, they gave out abundant rewards and said that even if the players died, they would still be rewarded in the real world and receive protection, so there would be no danger. Many people did not understand what was going on, but seeing the benefits, they couldn't help but join. This was especially so after thinking about the rewards and protection in the real world. They would not have to worry about their lives or offending anyone, which was quite tempting. As such, many ordinary people decided to join, while the larger factions were smarter and held back because they knew that there was something being hidden. After hearing from their spies, the countless factions were quite shocked. They had never expected Great Qin to be right here. All this time they had been living with a sleeping tiger next to them. After hearing about this, they couldn't help but think about how Great Qin would treat them as factions and large families. This made all of the factions within the Forest of Horrors quite anxious, as currently, Great Qin was destroying all of the factions that it encountered. The various dynasty legatees also sent people to promise the factions and large families great rewards and protection, and they said that even if they couldn't destroy Great Qin, they would at least be able to heavily injure it. The people sent by the dynasty legatees also told them about the 3 system main cities working together, resulting in many of the factions joining as well. The Zhu family, Zhang family, Holy Light Group, Soldier Alliance. Many factions that Zhaofu was familiar with were all forced to join in. After all, because it was Great Qin, if they did not unite together, they would die. Even though they knew of the potential consequences, if they didn't do this, their fate would be worse. They had no other choice but to fight, as they would potentially receive the protection of the various dynasty legatees. Most of the gullible ordinary people had already joined, and many factions were now also baited in. The factions not only sent out players but also indigenous residents under their command. Everyone was going all out. As for the system main cities, they not only sent their 100,000 stage 1 soldier, but also tens of thousands of able-bodied residents. The only faction that did not move out was Heaven's Choice, as it was Zhao Fu's faction. Zhao Fu did not choose to hide this, and after Zhao Fu became the Ying family's proxy leader, Heaven's Choice had been admired and respected by many but also hated by others. This was because Great Kin was in the Forest of Horrors, and facing the threat of Great Kin, there was no use in trying to curry favor. Since Heaven's Choice was created by Zhao Fu, it was definitely linked to Great Kin, so it was naturally viewed as an enemy by many factions. After hearing about this, Great Kin's spies in each of the system main cities were quite shocked. This meant that Zhao Fu might have to face a three-pronged attack, and their enemies numbered nearly 4 million people, including 300,000 stage 1 soldiers. Great Kin's army only had 450,000 people, so Great Kin would definitely lose if it faced a three-pronged attack of 4 million people. Soon, an even more shocking piece of news came. The three system main cities had methods to break isolation barriers, and they were already sending people to Holy Light City. Great Kin would definitely be taken by surprise, and it would be crushed by the 4 million people. The three system main cities had long since detected Great Kin's existence, and they knew that its methods were incredibly powerful. This was evident from the abnormal signs it had caused. As such, they had been preparing this entire time. Just as Great Kin had been developing, they had been secretly preparing various methods to deal with it. Since Great Kin could use isolation barriers, if it suddenly attacked a system main city, that city would be almost defenseless. However, since the Forest of Horrors three city lords had been preparing for such a long time, they naturally had ways to break through isolation barriers. Great Kin's spies quickly sent this information to Zhao Fu. Currently, Zhao Fu had not sensed any danger yet, and Holy Light City's city lord was tied down by the Wind Dragon Lord. Everything was going to plan, and he believed that they would be able to take Holy Light City soon. 509 Do you truly dare? Boom. The battle between the Wind Dragon Lord and the woman in white was incredibly intense, and the shockwaves created wild gales, making those nearby incredibly shocked. Zhao Fu used the dark ghost world and skeletons to quickly take over one of the city walls and prepared to enter the city without much resistance. Despite the situation, the woman in white's expression still did not change much, and she continued to battle with the Wind Dragon Lord. Suddenly, the Wind Dragon Lord sensed a large number of people approaching. As the lord of a region, her senses were incredibly sharp, and after noticing so many people, she realized that the situation was turning bad. Even though she knew that she was incredibly powerful, she did not have the confidence to fight against an entire region. Since she already took her egg back, there was not much to worry about, so there was no reason for her to risk her life and stay here. Just as she was about to leave, she looked down at Zhao Fu below. Even though their partnership this time had not worked out, there might be a next time. Thinking about the potential benefits, the Wind Dragon Lord warned him, "Boy, you should leave." Hearing this, Zhao Fu also sensed some danger. After speaking, the Wind Dragon Lord unleashed some powerful winds and forced back the woman in white before retreating. Zhao Fu understood that the situation had changed and immediately yelled, "Retreat." Great Kin's countless soldiers felt quite surprised. They were about to take down Holy Light City, so why were they retreating? However, Zhao Fu's commands were absolute, so all of the soldiers started to retreat. "Your Majesty, what's going on?" Some of the generals, who hadn't noticed the danger yet, asked Zhao. An icy look appeared in Zhao Fu's eyes as he said, "The situation has changed. Tell everyone to quickly retreat." Hearing this, the generals looked quite surprised and immediately ordered the soldiers to retreat faster. Very soon, Great Kin's soldiers retreated like a receding ocean wave, and everyone within Holy Light City let out a sigh of relief. The danger was over. The woman in white looked at Great Kin's retreating soldiers and understood what was happening. She had long since made an agreement with the two other city lords. She would stall Great Kin while the other two sides came to pincer Great Kin. However, Great Kin had been unexpectedly powerful, and they could barely defend the city walls. If they rushed out, they would die incredibly quickly in front of Great Kin's 450,000 soldiers. Basically, all of the players had run to the other system main cities or other regions, so she did not have many players at her disposal. Otherwise, she could have used a large number of players to stall Great Kin. However, even though they could not stall Great Kin for too long, this would be a good opportunity to heavily wound Great Kin, so they couldn't pass up on such a chance. Since Great Kin had came to attack them, This meant that there was essentially no chance of them living in harmony. They would have to fight until only one of them remained. The woman in white immediately made a decision and sent a large number of Stage 1 soldiers out of Holy Light City to chase after Great Kin. This was not to fight with them but to slow down their retreat. Seeing the many system main city soldiers rushing out, Zhao Fu did not hesitate and left behind the 150,000 skeletons as cannon fodder to slow down the system main city soldiers. The system main city soldiers and countless skeletons immediately started fighting while Great Kin's army quickly sped away. Seeing this, the woman in white wanted to go and help, but she suddenly saw Zhao Fu's blood-red eyes. She immediately felt danger and an overwhelming chilling intent, so she stayed her steps. Zhao Fu looked away. If the woman in white had chased after them, he and the other city lords would have attacked her together. Right now, escaping was their main goal, but if the other side was determined to stop them, Zhao Fu could only take the risk to kill her. In the distance, 2 teleportation channels continuously flashed as waves of people streamed out and rushed towards Great Kin. Zhao Fu finally received the news from his spies and understood what was going on. He couldn't help but coldly harumph. It seemed that the ordinary players and factions were indeed Great Kin's biggest obstacles. Seeing the 2 waves of people rushing over, the woman in white sent more people to join with them. The 150,000 skeletons were able to stop the Stage 1 soldiers and cause many injuries and deaths, but they were quickly destroyed. After all, the skeletons were relying on their numerical advantage. They were summoned by the skeleton mages, not the disaster cavalry, so they were not very strong. However, those skeletons could be summoned at any time, so losing them was not a big deal. Right now, Great Kin had escaped the 3-pronged attack, but the other side was still furiously chasing after them. The 4 million people formed a massive ocean and gave off an aura that seemed to shake the heavens. Zhao Fu stood in the air, a look of fury on his face. His eyes coldly looked ahead at the ocean of people. This was the first time that Great Kin had run away so wretchedly. However, with Great Kin's 450,000 soldiers, it was impossible to defend against 4 million people. It was not just a matter of numbers, but that there was no benefit at all to staying. It would only lead to their whole army being destroyed. Do you truly dare to make an enemy out of Great Kin? Zhao Fu unleashed all of his power, not just the city lord seal but also his nation armament and clan armament. A heaven-toppling aura rushed out, causing the heavens and earth to dim and for clouds to roll about. A devastating wind started to blow as trees madly swayed and rocks were lifted into the air. It was as if it was the end of the world. A terrifying aura covered everyone present, and his cold voice seemed to stab into everyone's ears like an icy blade. Immediately, the massive ocean of people completely stopped. What? Great Kin was ahead? Only now did the countless ordinary people understand the situation. Their expressions changed, and they were overwhelmed with fear, wanting to escape. However, someone said, "Don't worry, everyone. Whether it's within the Heaven Awakened world or the real world, you will receive massive benefits. Even if you die, you don't need to worry. You will receive protection. Also, you don't need to worry about Great Kin's method to bring people into the Heaven Awakened world. They can only do it to a few people. We have many people, so don't worry. Even if you're caught by them, just commit suicide before they can do anything to you. Right now, Great Kin is planning to destroy the Forest of Horror's 3 system main cities, but if they're gone, where can we go? As such, we have to fight. Look, Great Kin is running away from us, so there's no need to feel afraid. If you think about it, do you really think that Great Kin will spare you? Fight. It's the same outcome regardless. 510 Destroy Great Kin. Hearing that person's voice, everyone else felt one's blood course through one's veins. Right now, Great Kin was indeed running away from them. It was shocking to think that Great Kin would ever show fear and run. Moreover, when they thought about the large reward even if they died, the ocean of people once again flooded forward with even more momentum. Someone called out, "That's right. There's nothing to be afraid of, so let's all charge and kill everyone in Great Kin. They're not invincible. They are feeling afraid as well." Seeing the ocean of people rush forwards, Zhao Fu felt quite furious and drew the Sky Demon sword. He raised it and roared, "Godly Hell's Doors." This time, Zhao Fu used all of his power, including the nation armament and clan armament, and the massive power entered the Sky Demon sword, causing it to give off a shocking demonic light. Boom! An explosion rang out as a black pillar of light shot into the sky, and an enormous black hole that was 10,000 meters wide suddenly opened. Countless streams of demonic chi rushed out as terrifying howls could be heard and countless demons charged out. This time, it was not only the little demons but also demons that were 2 meters tall, demons with ferocious faces, demons with slim bodies, and demons with flames burning around them. There were hundreds of thousands of these demons, and they fearsomely roared as they charged at the ocean of people. The 2 groups soon clashed together. Countless demons slashed with their claws, leaving behind icy lights as they dismembered players into countless pieces, sending blood everywhere. The little demons also stabbed with their pitchforks, piercing many players' chests. However, the players showed no fear and continued to rush up. Their weapons stabbed into the demons' bodies, causing them to howl and burst into countless traces of demonic chi. The wave of demons continuously charged at the players, causing the ocean of people to slightly pause before they were destroyed. However, this allowed Great Kin's army to open up a considerable gap between them. By now, many of Great Kin's soldiers had already passed through the teleportation channels and returned to the Great Kin city. Zhao Fu coldly harumphed and also disappeared in the air. Countless people looked at Great Kin's escaping soldiers and did not continue chasing. Instead, they loudly cheered. They were all incredibly excited and emotional. This was the first time that anyone had triumphed against Great Kin and caused it to run away so wretchedly. With how terrifying and ruthless Great Kin was, they had never thought that they would be able to do such a thing. Today, they were bound to become incredibly famous because they had defeated Great Kin and would be admired by the whole world. How could they not feel excited? Who had done such a thing before? The countless spies of various factions couldn't help but laugh. They had thought that Great Kin would have another trump card and had been prepared to die, hoping to at least heavily injure Great Kin. Who would have thought that Great Kin would have run like that? Even though Great Kin had barely lost any people, it was a big blow to its morale. Countless people celebrated, feeling incredibly victorious. However, the three city lords in the air looked quite worried. They had allowed Great Kin to escape. They would never have such a good opportunity again, and they would face a furious counterattack from Great Kin. Great Kin had narrowly avoided disaster, but it had lost all of its reputation. This matter quickly spread to the real world, shocking everyone who heard it. Great Kin had lost? And had run away from 4 million people? Countless people couldn't help but laugh, and they felt much better. This meant that Great Kin was not invincible and that they could defeat Great Kin. Even though there was not a single faction that could survive an attack from 4 million people, Great Kin was different. Within countless people's hearts, Great Kin was something that stood above gods. However, no one expected it to suddenly crash down like this. This meant that Great Kin did not have any more powerful cards up its sleeve and that it was defeatable. They no longer had to be afraid, because it was possible for them to destroy Great Kin. Many factions started to feel much better about the situation, and the happiest were the various dynasty legatees because this had all been planned by them. As dynasty legatees, it was impossible for them to settle in peace, so they had to think of ways to destroy Great Kin or limit Great Kin's development. However, none of them had expected to force Great Kin into retreat. This was the first time that they had beaten Great Kin, and after losing so many times in the past, they had lost all confidence. This had been a complete surprise. They quickly fulfilled their promises, giving everyone who had participated rewards. They had to keep their promise, or it would be impossible to fight Great Kin in the future. This made the entire forest of horrors even more joyful. This matter did indeed cause Great Kin's reputation to fall. Now that they had won against Great Kin once, they no longer felt afraid of Great Kin anymore. Many people had vented out the anger in their hearts and felt much better. The foreign factions all let out a sigh of relief as well. Great Kin had put an immense amount of pressure on them, and now that Great Kin had lost, they felt quite relieved. In actuality, Great Kin did not really lose because it had just performed a tactical retreat. It had barely lost any people, and this was quite common on battlefields. However, in terms of might, they had lost. This was something that the whole world was happy to see. The many people gathered outside the Ying family's residence quickly dispersed, no longer wanting Great Kin writs and Holy Daughter writs. Only a few people remained. Some of these people thought that this was a good opportunity. After all, Great Kin had just retreated and was still incredibly powerful. Now that everyone else had left, perhaps by staying they would seem more sincere and perhaps would obtain one of the writs. Some of the families that had sent women to the Ying family also decided to support Great Kin. After all, if they sent someone over then brought the person back, that would be far too shameful. Moreover, they believed that Great Kin was still hiding some cards up its sleeve, and it just wasn't time to use them yet. The memory of Great Kin instantly annihilating 100 million players was still deeply engraved in them. They were betting on Great Kin's potential. Once Great Kin continued to win, they, who had supported Great Kin, would receive great benefits and would be able to officially join it. If they continuously hopped about and were indecisive, they would never be valued by Great Kin. 511 The search for Great Kin. Luckily, the Ying family had not accepted many women, only the 4 from earlier. Otherwise, many large families would have came to demand their people back. It was impossible that everyone would put their faith in Great Kin and stand against the other factions. The Ying family paid a great deal of attention to this matter, and the family leaders came to Zhao Fu's villa. However, after hearing that he was still in the Heaven Awakened world, They did not disturb him because they knew that things would be quite chaotic for him in the Heaven Awakened world. As such, they told the bodyguard to alert them immediately when Xiaofu woke up. After hearing about this news, the four women did not react too greatly. Before, Liu Yuan and Ban Yuling held on to a trace of hope that their families would take them back. But after hearing from their families, they could only give up completely. From that moment onwards, they resigned themselves to the fact that they belonged to Great Qin and Great Qin's legatee. Feng Shu paid a great deal of attention about Great Qin's legatee, and after hearing the news, she ran to Xiaofu's villa, wanting to hear about Great Qin's legatee's condition. After all, she already thought of herself as Great Qin a legatee's woman, but she was stopped by the bodyguard. On the other hand, Li Muqing showed the least reaction. She continued to do what she normally did, which was reading books and occasionally painting. She occasionally talked with Liu Yuan about music and acted as if she hadn't heard about the matter. Back at the Forest of Horrors, all of the shops related to Great Qin were closed. Since they had chosen to fight, the system main cities would not hold back. Luckily, Great Qin had already recalled all of its people, so there were not any injuries or casualties. However, Heaven's Choice was not so lucky. Its headquarters was surrounded by countless players, and most people chose to leave the faction. Only a small portion of people chose to remain loyal and resist, and they were all killed. It could be said that all of Great Qin's factions in the Forest of Horrors had been destroyed, and nothing affiliated with it had survived. However, even though Heaven's Choice had been destroyed, its core members had already been sent to the Ying family's residence. Nevertheless, Heaven's Choice would cease to exist from now on. This was because after dying, people would be randomly sent to another location, so it was almost impossible for the core members to be sent to the same place, making it impossible to re-establish the same Heaven's Choice. Only after the regions were all opened up would Xiaofu be able to re-establish the same Heaven's Choice. Apart from destroying Great Qin's factions, the three system main cities also gave out quests to start conducting a blanket search to seek out where Great Qin was. Through the abnormal signs caused by Great Qin, the three system main cities could guess roughly which direction it was in, so they hoped to find it through a large-scale blanket search. Now, all of the players were willing to do their bidding, so this was a good opportunity to find Great Qin. If they could really find it, they would be able to quickly get rid of this menace. Only after they destroyed Great Qin would they be able to feel safe. In actuality, the players were not doing their bidding but the dynasty legatees. They had just received massive rewards from the various dynasty legatees, so they were incredibly happy and were naturally willing to obey them. Just as the three system main cities wanted to destroy Great Qin, the dynasty legatees did too. The reward for finding Great Qin was incredibly alluring. The three system main cities offered a reward of 300,000 gold coins while the dynasty legatees offered a total of $1 billion in the real world and would allow them to become a core member of one of their factions and receive protection. Those rewards were incredibly tempting, and many people went out to madly search for Great Qin. Damn it! Xiaofu gnashed his teeth in fury as he slammed his fist onto a table. Everyone in the hall lowered their heads, not daring to make a sound, and the atmosphere within the hall was quite oppressive. After Great Qin retreated, Xiaofu gathered all of his generals. After receiving various pieces of news, he felt incredibly furious. Every time, it was ordinary people who had been a grave threat to Great Qin. Xiaofu had never wanted to kill ordinary people, only those who opposed him. However, now, he wanted to kill all of the ordinary people as well. He could not allow them to threaten Great Qin time and time again. Xiaofu's eyes gave off a cold glow, thinking whether he should cause another catastrophe. However, that was not quite possible. He had promised the Sky Desolation Azure Dragon that he wouldn't do anything that would destroy the Heaven Awakened world, and even if he broke that promise, the Sky Desolation Azure Dragon would definitely step in again. Right now, Great Qin was unable to resist it. Apart from the Sky Desolation Azure Dragon, there were also 3 other guardian beasts that would definitely step in. Just the Sky Desolation Azure Dragon alone was incredibly powerful, let alone the others. Xiaofu felt that Great Qin was simply too weak right now, and it was as if it could be easily destroyed by anyone without much resistance. Xiaofu hated this feeling. Only by throwing away everything else would they be able to continuously grow more and more powerful. At that moment, Xiaofu's handsome face became quite savage, and his eyes became even redder, making him look quite berserk. Everyone who saw him trembled. Within the boundless darkness, the gigantic devilish star suddenly gave off an incredibly intense blood-red light, and an energy filled with an aura of destruction gradually formed. The chaotic imperial star seemed as if it was no longer bound by the laws of the universe. What was even more shocking was that a large amount of a black aura started to rise up from Xiaofu's body. This was his king's power and his king's fate, and at this moment, it started to turn blood red. Within Xiaofu's soul, that demon god attribute slowly unleashed its power, causing Xiaofu's soul to change. A chilling feeling spread out, making everyone feel as if they had fallen into a bottomless abyss, and their expressions became ones of shock as they looked at Zhao Fu. Immediately, they found that Zhao Fu's appearance started to become inhuman. Two fangs started growing out of his mouth, and his ears became sharper. His black hair slowly became blood red, and his noble and domineering aura became one of bloodlust and slaughter. Standing beside Zhao Fu, Xianru looked quite serious and walked over, stretching out her hand. A five-colored light shined on her palm as she lightly patted Zhao Fu's back, saying, "Your Majesty, you're the ruler of Great Qin, you can't allow yourself to be affected by other powers." Immediately, Zhao Fu felt as if he had been woken up from a dream. He looked up and hazily looked around him, returning to his former self. This allowed everyone in the hall to release a sigh of relief. They looked at Xianru with gratitude. If it wasn't for her, none of them would have been able to stop Zhao Fu. No matter what Zhao Fu became like, they would still follow his orders absolutely. Xianru knowingly smiled and slightly lowered her head, acknowledging the general's looks as she returned to Zhao Fu's side. "Your Majesty, what should Great Qin do about the blanket search being conducted?" Bei Qi said, drawing Zhao Fu's mind to something else. 512 traps and ambushes. Hearing Bei Qi's words, Zhao Fu thought about it and said, "Send out all of our assassins to hunt down anyone who searches. The Forest of Horrors terrain is quite suitable for them. However, they must not wait until the people have reached Great Qin's territory before acting. They must actively search out people and attack them in different places to confuse them. Otherwise, they'll be able to pinpoint Great Qin's location. Also, Bei Qi, I leave all of the soldiers and 1 million residents to you. I want you to set up a large number of traps around Great Qin's territory. Even though we have 2.8 million residents, making it difficult for them to take down the Great Qin city, the other villages might be in danger, so we need to set up traps to deal with a large number of people." "I will do as you said, Your Majesty," Bei Qi replied. Following this, Zhao Fu said, "Finally, order Bei Shan to see if he can research a way to attack people in the real world. Unless those ordinary people's lives are in danger, they won't feel any fear." Even though Great Qin had the reality fruit tree, it only grew 5 reality fruits per day, which was equal to 50 in 10 days. This was not of much use, so Zhao Fu wanted Bei Shan to research a way to attack people in the real world. Zhao Fu gave out a chain of commands, and the generals all left to take care of those matters. In the end, it was just Zhao Fu and Xianru left in the hall. Zhao Fu thought back to how he had almost lost control of his soul. Back then, his mind had been incredibly hazy, and he looked at Xianru and asked seriously, "What just happened?" Xianru lowered her head and answered truthfully, "Because Your Majesty fused with a demon god's divinity and unlocked the Chaos Imperial Star, this is one of the side effects. If Your Majesty is able to stick to your ideals, there won't be any problems. However, if they start to guide and control Your Majesty, there will be some unknown effects. Even though I don't know what the final product of the combination of a demon god's divinity, the Myrtle Imperial Star, and the Chaos Demon Star will be, the three of them are incredibly powerful and will turn Your Majesty into a forbidden existence." Speaking to there, Xianru's tone became even more serious as she said, "Your Majesty, you must pay attention to this matter and keep your emotions in check. In fact, if Your Majesty can increase your contact with women, that would be for the best. This is especially so for the women whom you've made your imperial concubines. Their phoenix chi is not only good for Your Majesty's body, but it can also refine Your Majesty's fate and neutralize some of the demon god's attributes and the Chaos Imperial Star's effects. If Your Majesty is unwilling to lay a hand on them, women like Liu Mai, Daisy, like Inkian, Liu Sabai, and Asumi are all quite good. However, the ones who I think would be best are Ba King and Shuo King. Both of them have immense phoenix chi. In fact, the amount of phoenix chi that Ba King has can rival the amount of phoenix chi your imperial concubines have combined, and Shuo King has a bit more than Ba King. However, there seems to be some sort of power interfering, making it difficult for me to see it clearly. Shuo King's background is definitely quite extraordinary, so Your Majesty, I would recommend her. Of course, if Your Majesty chooses both, that would be for the best, and if Your Majesty needs supplements, I can refine for you some special medicinal pills from the school of Yin Yang." Ahem. Somehow the topic had turned to this. Hearing Xianru mention refining special medicinal pills, Zhao Fu couldn't help but cough. What was going on? Normally, subordinates urge their lieges to stay away from women, yet Xianru was trying to throw women at him. In the end, Zhao Fu could only say, "I'll have a think about it." Seeing this, Xianru inwardly sighed, but she could not say much else. Just as both of them stopped talking, a flirtatious voice suddenly said, "Owner, hurry up and do me. I've been waiting for you day and night, and I've started to leak fluids." This shameless voice caused Zhao Fu and Xianru's faces to both turn red. The only person who would say such a thing would be the Sin Dragon, Long Xiao Xiao. Zhao Fu could only helplessly reply, "Didn't I say to be quiet normally? Look how quiet the three other swords are." In response, Long Xiao harumphed, "They don't have needs, but I do. Every day, I want to use all sorts of positions." Hearing these incredibly shameless words, the three other swords couldn't help but step in. The Sky Demon called out, "Perverted dragon, can't you be more prudent? Why are you thinking about these sorts of things every day?" Zhao Fu nodded in agreement, approving of what the Sky Demon had said. This made Long Xiao quite displeased, and she cried out in protest. Beside them, Xianru couldn't help but lightly laugh, saying, "Your Majesty, this sword's grade is extremely high, so make sure you take care of it." Hearing that there was someone on her side, Long Xiao felt quite happy. Just as she was about to say something, Zhao Fu hurriedly cut her off. If this went on, Zhao Fu wouldn't be able to take it anymore. Elsewhere, Great Ken's 30,000 assassins followed Zhao Fu's commands, and under the leadership of the 12 assassin leaders, they started to move out. In the face of massive rewards, countless people wanted to find the super treasure chest that was Great Ken. There were people all over the place searching because once they found Great Ken, the reward would belong to them. Given the dangers of the wilderness, which contained ferocious wild beasts as well as outlanders, some people decided to make groups of 10 or so people to stay safe. Countless people started madly searching, and if they continued like this, Great Ken would be discovered sooner or later. The Forest of Horrors was filled with all sorts of strange trees and plants, and massive trees blocked out the sun wherever they were. This made the lighting quite dim, and the terrain was filled with obstacles, making it difficult to move around in the wilderness. Most people with battle professions felt quite uncomfortable in such an environment because it was difficult for them to move around or attack. However, to rogues or assassins, this was their playing field. They could use their agile bodies to dart about completely unnoticed. Great Ken's 30,000 assassins started to move out. In complex terrain like the Forest of Horrors, a numerical advantage meant nothing. Of course, if it was on open, flat ground, Zhao Fu would not have even sent the assassins, or they would have been slaughtered in an instant. Right now, the countless people had not noticed any danger, as they were not clear as to what methods Great Ken would use. On the other hand, they were still drunk on their victory. After all, they had just defeated Great Ken, and there were countless threads on the internet about how mighty they were and how Great Ken had run away from them. Moreover, because there were so many of them, they felt that they had nothing to fear, so they swaggered about without any caution. It was as if they did not put Great Ken in their eyes anymore and thought that they would be able to win against it again. Soon, Great Ken's assassins would clash with them for the first time. 513 Night of Slaughter. A group of 7 people walked through the forest with a big man leading the way. The big man happily said, "How great would it be if we discovered Great Ken's location? We wouldn't have to worry for the rest of our lives. The real world is becoming more and more chaotic, and if we have the protection of a large family, we won't have to worry about safety anymore." Another youth said excitedly, "That's what I was thinking about. If we find Great Ken, not only do we not have to worry about our safety, but we can also have anything we want." Suddenly, a plain-looking woman said worriedly, "Great Ken retreated, but now that we're daringly searching for it, won't Great Ken counterattack?" "Humphrey." One of the youths coldly harumphed and said mockingly, "Great Ken's nothing now, and there's nothing to be afraid of. It ran away like a scared dog when it saw us." "That's right. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore. We players have all come out to find it, and facing so many of us, Great Ken is definitely hiding in fear. You don't need to worry," a middle-aged woman laughed as she said. Hearing this, the plain-looking woman didn't say anything else because she felt that what they said was true. With so many people, what did they have to be afraid of? Kai. Suddenly, a soft sound could be heard as a warm fluid splashed on the woman's face. The woman, who had been looking down and thinking to herself, brought her hand to her face and found that it was blood. She quickly looked up and saw that the 6 others' throats had been slit and were lying on the ground completely dead. Just what was happening? Before the woman could react, a hooded figure appeared behind her and covered her mouth as a cold voice said, "Great Ken is not something you group of ants can resist." After saying this, the person's other hand mercilessly slashed her neck with a dagger, causing blood to spurt out. The woman felt a sting of pain in her neck and gurgled before dying. After killing the 7 people, a few hooded figures appeared and dragged their corpses into the bushes and covered them up before leaping into the trees and disappearing. These were only a few people at the head of the player army, and those behind him had no idea what had happened. This was because every team was quite far away from each other. If they were too close to each other, once one team found Great Ken, the other teams would also know. Because of this, it was much easier for Great Ken's assassins to act. After killing those 7 people, the hooded figures found another group of 6 people. Whenever they found small groups like this, they would attack immediately. They found an opportunity and suddenly darted out from the thickets. Before the 6 people could react, their throats had been slit, and their hearts had been pierced. The group of assassins easily killed these people and dragged their bodies into the bushes again, covering them up. This was to prevent other players from noticing anything, because after seeing the corpses, they would become careful, making it more difficult for Great Kin's assassins to attack. The people at the front of the player army were continuously hunted down by Great Kin's assassins, while those behind had no idea what was going on and continued onward. Great Kin's assassins had killed countless people, and the sky gradually darkened. The moon and stars were not out tonight, making it quite dark. Now, it was even more ideal for Great Kin's assassins to act. The players started to become more alert and lit torches, but that only revealed their positions and made it easier for Great Kin's assassins to find them. As the night went on, most of the players started to rest or started to cultivate, and some of them left the Heaven Awakened world to return to the real world for a while before returning. This was because there was a big time difference between the Heaven Awakened world and the real world. After returning to the real world, some of the players wanted to go to the Heaven Awakened world forum to look at threads of people praising them, but the forum was instead filled with threads about other things. Fudge. This elder was looking for Great Kin's position when I suddenly saw a black blur and was killed. I was the same. I didn't see anything before being pierced in the heart from behind. I didn't even see who killed me. That feels so bad. You guys as well? Everyone in my team was suddenly killed by a few people from the bushes. Those people were incredibly strong and fast, and we died before we could even react. Seeing these threads, all of the people in the Forest of Horrors felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. Their pleased smiles immediately froze. How could so many people have died without them noticing anything? They were all in the wilderness right now looking for Great Kin. In that case, they would most likely be attacked as well. When they thought of that, countless people quickly returned to the Heaven Awakened world. Some people were quite lucky. After waking up, they saw some traces of blood and discovered their teammates' bodies within bushes. They had narrowly escaped disaster. However, some were not so lucky. They quickly told their teammates about what had happened, but they were quickly surrounded by people in hoods and died shortly after. The front of the player army was immediately gravely wounded, but those behind quickly spread the news, scaring some people into immediately running back to the system main cities. Great Kin's assassins continued to hunt them down. Now that people knew about them, they did not have to act as secretively. Pain howls tore through the night air, making the night seem incredibly terrifying. Indeed, this was a night of slaughter. Early the next morning, the red sun slowly rose over the mountains and cast an orange glow on the ground. A new day had come. Countless players escaped back to the system main cities in terror, breathing raggedly. The previous night had been too terrifying. There had been hooded figures darting about all over the place, madly killing any players they saw. 3 million players had gone out, but only 2.6 million or so players had returned. In other words, in just a single day, they had lost 400,000 people. This figure was simply too shocking, making many people's faces pale. They all stopped being so arrogant and realized just how terrifying Great Kin was. Last time, Great Kin had only performed a tactical retreat. This did not mean that it was weak. Only after clashing with Great Kin again did they realize just how monstrous it was. In actuality, 400,000 was not a lot. Zhao Fu had sent out 30,000 assassins, which meant that each person had killed roughly 13 people. That was over an entire day, and the forests were the most ideal terrain for them. Adding on their powerful cultivations and equipment, killing 13 people each in a day was not that impressive. However, after that bloodbath, no player dared to come out to look for Great Kin anymore. 514 Clown Bone. Many factions had expected this slaughter. Facing 4 million people, Great Kin had weighed the costs and benefits and wisely chosen to retreat. However, this made the ordinary people naively think that Great Kin was defenseless, which was completely wrong. Once they became scattered, Great Kin was able to hunt them down easily. With the ordinary people's power, facing Great Kin meant death. Now, they had been arrogant to try to find Great Kin's headquarters. How could they not face resistance? After looking around, countless ordinary people had been massacred without any resistance. Within a day, 400,000 players had died, greatly reducing the players' morale. All of their expressions were quite dim, and none of them dared to continue to oppose Great Kin. However, the 400,000 players had not died for nothing. There were many ability users and espers, and they gathered information from where they had died and had been able to make a few guesses as to Great Kin's rough location. This was incredibly good news, and the various factions and dynasty legatees once again gave out large rewards to motivate the players to find Great Kin. They once again gathered a massive army. Even if they couldn't destroy Great Kin, they would be able to heavily wound it and level the playing field. In the face of massive benefits, the ordinary players were once again moved. Their low morale was boosted high because this time, they would be gathered together instead of split up. Now that they had a better idea of where Great Kin was, they just had to stick together and move. After hearing about this, the 3 system main cities moved out as well. With the support of 3 system main cities, the countless players became even more confident. Very soon, the army once again formed, and 3 million or so people headed towards Great Kin. Great Kin quickly received news of this, and Zhao Fu looked at Beiqi and asked, "Has everything been prepared?" Beiqi slightly smiled and nodded. Zhao Fu felt relieved and looked at soldiers as he said in a loud voice, "Set out." Great Kin's soldiers started to advance towards the player army with high morale. The player army excitedly advanced incredibly quickly and reached Great Kin's territory. Immediately, they were greeted with all sorts of presents. Some fell into pits and were impaled on sharp wooden spikes, while others were crushed by falling objects. Others were stabbed by countless bamboo spears that shot out of nowhere. There were all sorts of traps, and they instantly caused many deaths, causing the player army to pause in its tracks. Seeing the countless traps and the 40,000 to 50,000 players who had died in an instant, the 3 city lords frowned and gave the order to advance carefully. Moreover, there were isolation barriers everywhere, making it impossible to use teleportation channels to skip past the countless traps. The tools that they had used to break the isolation barriers were connected to their system main city's teleportation channels, so it was impossible to use them here. However, just in case, Zhao Fu had ordered people to be stationed in high places to send alerts of people using teleportation channels to teleport over. Once this happened, they would immediately be surrounded and killed. The player army advanced with great difficulty because there were simply too many of them and too many traps. Soon, the casualties had reached nearly 100,000 players. This was not that great of a number, after all, these traps had been created by 1.45 million people, which was quite shocking. This was the benefit to defending. The player army continued to advance forwards and soon reached a large lake. The lake covered a few kilometers, and the water was a dirt yellow color and quite murky. However, it was not very deep, being less than half a meter deep, which made it easy to wade through and did not seem very dangerous. After suffering much just then, the 3 city lords and various leaders did not dare to be careless, and they wanted to go around it. However, there were mountains on either side of the lake, and it would take a long time for so many people to climb over the mountains. There was also a narrow ravine, but that was a perfect spot for an ambush. Moreover, with so many people, they would be at a great disadvantage in such terrain and would suffer great casualties. As such, they decided to wade through the lake. Of course, they sent people to scout the way first. Seeing that the scouts were able to make it through, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Following this, the player army started to enter the lake. Surprisingly, people easily made it to the other side without any issues, and they all started to relax, thinking that they were too alert and that this was just a normal lake. Soon, 1 million players had crossed over, and everyone let down their guards and felt quite safe. However, at that moment, something surprising happened. Countless waves started to surge towards the people within the water. Immediately, pained cries sounded out. Countless people felt something biting at their feet, causing them to instinctively raise their feet. However, this sent them off balance, causing them to completely fall into the water while the things in the water ferociously bit at their bodies. Blood quickly dyed the murky water red, and everyone else became quite startled and quickly retreated. The 3 city lords' expressions became grim, and they simultaneously acted. An incredibly powerful force hit the surface of the lake, causing ugly little fish with sharp teeth to splash out of the water. They were clown bone fish, which Great Kin had obtained during the Divine Fish Festival and had been raising this entire time. After such a long time, there were now hundreds of thousands of these fish, and they had incredibly sharp teeth that could even bite through iron. They were incredibly frightening, and they were why so many people were afraid of Seeping River. These clown bone fish were incredibly weak, and they all died under the 3 city lords' attacks. The rest of the players quickly saved those who were still alive. Most of them had not died, but their feet had been mostly bitten off. The players immediately realized Great Kin's plan and couldn't help but curse at Great Kin for being so insidious. This was because they realized that Great Kin's goal was not to kill them but to get rid of their battle power. Those who had their feet bitten off were unable to walk anymore. In just an instant, another 400,000 people had lost the power to walk or fight. Adding on the 100,000 or so people lost from the traps, that was 500,000 people in total, and combined with those killed by Great Kin's assassins, that was 900,000 people in total. Now, they only had around 2.7 million people who were still able to fight. They had lost so many people without even seeing Great Kin, making them wonder if they wanted to even continue. 515 arrow rain. After thinking about it, they decided to continue advancing. They had not even seen the shadow of Great Kin yet, but they had already lost so many people. Who knew what they would encounter if they continued onwards? Moreover, Great Kin had an army of 450,000 people, and if they went off the assumption that a faction had 5 residents for every soldier, Great Kin had at least 2 million residents. If that was the case, they no longer held a great numerical advantage, and if they advanced, they would most likely lose a large portion of their army, which was not worth it. When the time came, who knew whether it would be them destroying Great Kin or Great Kin destroying them? As such, they could only sigh and prepare to leave. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, the sound of the air being torn could be heard as arrows streaked towards the player army. The player army was still close to the lake and were on open ground, making them an extremely easy target. The players, who could not react in time, were instantly hit by arrows. Some soldiers quickly raised their shields, but under the immense rain of arrows, many people were still injured or killed. This was especially so for those whose feet had been maimed, they were unable to even dodge, and those who were carrying them were completely unprepared and hit by countless arrows. Countless cries sounded out continuously as blood flew everywhere, dyeing the ground and lake even redder. Rumble. As the arrows landed, a massive rumbling could be heard, causing the ground to tremble. Countless people looked over and were shocked to see a massive beast tide ferociously rushing towards them. There were many wild beasts, such as azure oxen, as well as wild boars, deer, and goats. They were the livestock that Great Kin had been raising and were preparing to sell. Currently, all of these animals' eyes were blood red, and they madly charged forward. Hurry up and fire arrows! Countless people fired arrows in terror, but because the animals were charging out from a dense forest, many of the arrows struck branches or leaves. Moreover, because some arrows were too weak, they were unable to cause any damage. At that moment, the system main city soldiers revealed their true strength. They drew their bows fully and released powerful arrows, which turned into black blurs that shot into the animals' bodies, causing them to die without any resistance. Because these animals were all ordinary animals, how could they defend against attacks from Stage 1 soldiers? The system main city soldiers reduced the incoming beast time by 1/4 and greatly reduced their momentum. Hurry! Shields! Despite the system main city soldiers firing arrows, the massive beast tide continued onwards. The players started to come to their senses and raise their shields. It was impossible to run, so their only hope was to resist. Seeing the beast tide flooding over, the 3 city lords were about to attack when suddenly 3 powerful attacks shot towards them, forcing them to defend. Boom! A massive explosion rang out as the gigantic beast tide smashed against the wall of shields. The wall of shields was instantly destroyed, but this greatly reduced the beast tide's momentum and slowed it down, allowing many people to rush up with their weapons. A great battle between humans and animals began, resulting in massive sounds. The battle was quite chaotic, the various animals gored and sent players flying while players continuously stabbed into the animals' bodies. Roars of pain could be heard, and blood continuously flew through the air. In the end, the player army was victorious. Not only did they have massive numbers, but the system main city soldiers were also able to kill the animals incredibly quickly. With the ordinary players' cultivations, they were able to barely defend against the animals as well. However, the beast tide of around 400,000 animals was still able to cause nearly 300,000 players' deaths. The 3 city lords looked at the 3 people in the distance seriously. They could tell that these 3 people were also system main city lords, but why would such people be here? Moreover, they seemed to be helping Great Kin. The various factions and dynasty legatees did not tell them Great Kin's true power in order to make them believe that they had the ability to defeat Great Kin and go all in to heavily injure it. As for the survival of the 3 system main cities, they did not care at all that mattered was fulfilling their goal. That was why the 3 city lords felt so surprised upon seeing those 3 other city lords. Boom! Another explosion sounded out as 10 black pillars of light shot into the clouds, causing the sky to shake. A massive black magic formation appeared, giving off a boundless deathly aura and black light. Immediately, all of the animals that had died suddenly started to go through changes, their skin and flesh slowly started to wither and fall off, revealing their skeletons. Black flames lit up within their heads, and they slowly stood up from the ground again. The countless players were incredibly shocked and quickly retreated. However, because that battle had only just concluded, many players were still beside these corpses. As soon as the countless animals' bodies turned into undead, they immediately started to attack the people around them. Many people were completely unprepared when they were suddenly attacked, resulting in many deaths. The people and animals once again began to fight. However, the players still held the advantage, as the animal skeletons were not very strong. In fact, after becoming skeletons, they had become weaker. The skeletons that the disaster cavalrymen summoned were more powerful than ordinary skeletons, but the skeletons were still slightly weaker than how strong they were when they were alive. After all, No skill could make skeletons more powerful than when they were alive, and perhaps even gods couldn't do this. This was because turning a corpse into an undead required a large amount of power, and this was taken from the skeletons themselves. Unless their strength was boosted by someone else, they would always be weaker than when they were alive. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, yet another dense wave of arrows shot out from the forest, giving off an incredibly sharp aura. However, the players were currently fighting with the sudden onslaught of animal skeletons, so they were unable to defend against these arrows, resulting in many more people dying. The more powerful auras seemed to be directed at the system main city soldiers, resulting in many of them perishing. Retreat. Upon seeing this, the various leaders and city lords could only loudly call for the army to retreat. The players and system main cities had suffered disastrous losses, and if this continued, they might be annihilated here. However, even though they wanted to retreat, the countless animal skeletons refused to let them go, and the continuous rain of arrows made it even more difficult for them to safely retreat. Even though the 3 city lords wanted to help out, whenever they tried to act, they were stopped by the 3 other city lords, making it impossible for them to intervene. In the end, some of the members of the player army were able to wretchedly escape, but they had suffered heavy losses. Only about 2 million players survived, and 50,000 system main city soldiers had died. Luckily, the system main city did not send any residents, or their casualties would have been even greater. 516 Demon Tree. Now, the Forest of Horrors still had 2 million players, and with the system main city's population and soldiers, they had roughly 3 million people. If everyone went to attack, Greatkin would not be able to defend very easily. This operation had been a failure, and the 3 system main cities went from an offensive position to a defensive position. With this experience, they no longer dared to casually attack Greatkin, as they understood that they were not powerful enough to destroy Greatkin. As such, they could only go on the defensive. News that the player army had been defeated quickly spread into the real world, causing many people to feel disappointed. However, most factions had expected this. With Greatkin's monstrous power, they had never hoped to destroy it. They had only wanted to heavily wound it. However, even though they had failed, they had still successfully made Greatkin seem less scary. Now, they knew that as long as enough people banded together, Greatkin would not dare to attack. Since Greatkin would not dare to attack them and they had the power to resist, why did they still need to fear Greatkin? As such, even though the player army had failed, they still made everyone less fearful of Greatkin and motivated people to resist Greatkin's tyranny. The Forest of Horrors' 3 system main cities went into full defense mode, and Greatkin did not dare to casually attack, resulting in a period of peace within the Forest of Horrors. There were much fewer people on the streets now within Holy Light City. Looking at the destroyed Westfall restaurant, Zhongru looked quite worried. What had happened to Zhao Xin? In order to destroy all of Greatkin's factions, the 3 system main cities naturally shut down any shops that they thought were associated with Greatkin. However, Greatkin had many shops, and because some of them were run by others, it was difficult to tell just which shops belonged to Greatkin. However, the 3 system main cities would rather shut down the wrong shops than let Greatkin off, so even some innocent shops were dragged in as well. Zhongru heard about Greatkin being in the Forest of Horrors due to such a big thing happening. Even if she didn't care about the matter, she would still hear about it from other people. However, Zhongru still hadn't realized that there was a connection between Zhaofu and Greatkin. She thought that Zhaofu's restaurant had been wrongly shut down, so she was quite worried about him. As Greatkin continuously developed in other regions, Zhaofu's fake name, Zhao Xin, was gradually forgotten by everyone. Barely anyone would be able to guess that Zhao Xin, who was Zhaofu, was Greatkin's legatee. It was impossible for Zhongru to guess such a thing, that Zhao Xin, who treated her so kindly, was Greatkin's bloodthirsty legatee. What should I do? Zhongru felt incredibly worried, but there was nothing she could do. This was because she normally went to the Westfall restaurant to find Zhaofu, but now that there was no one there, she could not find any information about Zhaofu. After looking around the Westfall restaurant, Zhongru could only dispiritedly return to her own tailor shop and pray that Zhao Xin was fine. Zhongru truly thought of Zhaofu as a friend and felt incredibly grateful to him. After all, it was only because of his help that she was able to live her own life. Back at Greatkin, they had successfully defended against this attack. This was the first time that Greatkin had been on the defensive, and it had suffered some losses. For example, all of the clown bonefish that they had been raising for so long had been killed. The livestock that they had been raising had also all died, which meant that Greatkin would not be able to eat their own meat for a while and would have to eat other types of meat. If things came to it, they could buy meat from other regions as well. Now, Greatkin had to consider how to attack the system main cities. They couldn't allow the situation to drag on like this. The system main cities would spawn new players every day, And if this continued on, they would regain the players that they lost during that last fight. Great Ken had spent a great deal of effort getting rid of those players, so they couldn't allow the system main cities to regain their player force. If that happened, Great Ken would be in an even worse spot, and it would be even more difficult for them to defeat the 3 system main cities. However, Great Ken now knew that the system main cities had ways of breaking through isolation barriers. If Great Ken attacked a system main city, the 2 other sides would immediately send people to pincer Great Ken. This made it quite difficult for Great Ken to attack, and Great Ken could only act once it thought of a surefire plan. That was what the factions within the 3 system main cities were thinking as well. With the 3 system main cities as shields, they did not have to worry about Great Ken or fear Great Ken. They only had to wait a bit for new players to spawn, and they would be able to once again attack Great Ken. They had obtained great benefits and were willing to do this for the safety of their factions. They had failed this time, but they had only been disappointed for a short while. After returning to their system main cities, they calmed down and did not fear Great Ken. After all, they knew that Great Ken would not dare to attack, so they were quite safe. Before, countless people would surrender before Great Ken even attacked. They would plead to negotiate, but now, such a thing would not happen. As for the ordinary people, because they had just gone through much suffering, most of them stayed within the system main cities and did not dare to go out because they feared an ambush from Great Ken. However, they did not feel depressed because even though they had lost, they still received some rewards from the large factions, which was still quite good. Regardless, even though the 3 system main cities had lost this fight, they did not seem like they had lost. Instead, they held their heads high and felt completely unafraid, not putting Great Ken in their eyes at all. On the other hand, through much thinking, Zhao Fu thought of a good plan. It was not to send his army to attack but a more shameless method. He didn't know whether it would be effective or not, but it was worth a try because they would not lose anything if it failed. Zhao Fu took his 12 assassin leaders and Xianru along to his first target, Demon Tree City. Demon Tree City's city lord was an elder, whose body and strength were weaker than the 2 other city lords. There was a fairly high chance of success, and because Zhao Fu had no qualms about attacking the elderly, he set his sights on Demon Tree City's city lord. After making some preparations, they waited until night fell to begin their operation. There was a full moon that night, which was quite bright, making it not too hard to see in the night. Zhao Fu and his group of people moved out. Their goal was to assassinate the city lord. Since they could not win in a direct fight, they would have to act in secret. If they could assassinate a city lord, things would become much easier, but Zhao Fu was not completely confident that they could pull this off. 517 Nothing is true because Zhao Fu and the 12 assassin leaders all had the assassin profession. It was quite easy for them to sneak into the system main city. The only person who didn't have the profession was Xianru, but with her yin-yang techniques, she was able to get in without any trouble as well. It was already late in the night, and most people were already sleeping. The system main city was completely dark and very quiet, and there was only the occasional cry of a bird. Zhao Fu led his group straight to the city hall. It was likely that it would be heavily guarded, so they all became quite careful. If they alerted anyone, their plan would fail. Zhao Fu was currently the most powerful assassin because he had not only passed a higher grade trial than the others but also had the assassin lord ring. He could use the 12 others' powers, and with the stealthers' abilities, Zhao Fu could easily enter the city hall. The city hall was quite big, and the city lord was most likely at the center. Zhao Fu went in first to look around, and after confirming where the city lord was, he came out and ordered the others to start acting. The patrolling soldiers had no idea that some people had snuck in. By now, all of the 12 assassin leaders had at least stage 2 cultivation and their equipment sets power, making it difficult for the soldiers to detect them. Now, Zhao Fu's party headed straight to the center of the city hall. Currently, the green-robed elder had his eyes closed because he was sitting on a cattail mat as he cultivated. He had been quite surprised that 3 city lords had been willing to help Great Ken's legatee, which had been quite detrimental to them. In terms of high-end battle power, they had lost. The other side not only had 3 city lords, but it also had a dynasty legatee, which meant that if they fought, the Forest of Horrors city lords would be at a disadvantage. What the green-robed elder didn't know was that Great Ken actually had 10 city lords and had only sent out 3 to give them some pressure and not reveal all of their cards. Even though the other side had 4 high-end powers, with the 3 city lords' strength, they would not dare to easily attack. However, the green-robed elder never expected the other side to come assassinate him right now. Zhao Fu and his group did not dare to make any big movements, as once the alarm rang, it would be quite difficult to assassinate the city lord, resulting in the failure of the plan. After all, once the alarm was raised, the other 2 city lords would hurry over, making the situation quite bad for Zhao Fu's side. A light breeze passed by, and the 10 or so soldiers standing guard outside the room had their throats slit, and they instantly died. Their corpses were quickly put into spatial rings, and Zhaofu's people also did their best to hide the smell of blood. However, at that moment, the green-robed elder's eyes suddenly opened, giving off a cold light as the doors flew open and black blurs shot towards the green-robed elder. Time was of the essence, and they could not waste even a single second. Seeing these people shooting towards him, the green-robed elder showed an expression of disdain. Even though they were a group of assassins, they only had stage 2 cultivation while he had stage 4 cultivation and a city lord seal. As such, he did not put them in his eyes at all. He casually waved his hand, causing a green light to shine as 12 green leaves, giving off an abnormally sharp aura, flew towards the 12 people. The leaves contained immense power, and if hit, a person's body could be split in two. Chuoba King understood how powerful this attack was, so she swung her large blood-red sword, giving off a blood-red sword light to defend against the leaf coming towards her, while Little Shah used his agile footwork to dodge. Everyone else also used one's various methods to defend against or dodge the green-robed elder's attack. The green-robed elder felt quite surprised upon seeing this. Even though he had not used his City Lord Seal's power, he was still a stage 4 cultivator, and normal stage 2 cultivators should have been killed by that attack. These people were quite strange. Seeing these people continue towards him, the green-robed elder stood up and wanted to use his full power to kill these people. He did not put these stage 2 people in his eyes at all. As long as he unleashed his full power, he would be able to kill them in an instant. However, at that moment, the 12 figures rushed to the side and stood around him. Each of them stretched out a hand towards him as a gray light enveloped their hands, and a magic formation suddenly formed beneath the green-robed elder's feet. This magic was quite complex and made out of 12 circles. It gave off an incredibly cold and murderous aura and formed an invisible domain. This was the combined ability of the 12 assassin equipment sets. Nothing is true. Anyone within this domain would have one's speed and power reduced. The green-robed elder was quite shocked that this domain could weaken his power. He did not hesitate anymore and immediately planned to use his City Lord Seal to blow these people into ashes. However, just as he was about to attack, another figure appeared. It was an extremely beautiful woman in a violet dress. Her body gave off a strange light as she quickly performed hand seals. 10 violet talisman papers hung in a row in the air and gave off a mysterious violet light. Amnesty. Xianru called out as the 10 talisman papers turned into 10 rays of violet light and shot towards the green-robed elder with terrifying power. The green-robed elder could tell that these 10 talisman papers were not ordinary. He unleashed his City Lord Seal's power and turned his attention to those incoming talisman papers. Kai. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing into flesh could be heard. Without him knowing, a black hooded figure, who was eerily smiling, had appeared behind the green-robed elder. Immediately, the green-robed elder felt the aura of death seep into his body. Even though the dagger that had stabbed him had not hit any of his vitals, the deathly aura corroded his life force. The green-robed elder's expression fell, and he tried to use his City Lord Seal's power to suppress the deathly aura, but a lethal poison also started to spread throughout his body. The green-robed elder coughed up a large mouthful of blood before he stumbled and fell to the ground. By now, many soldiers had sensed that something was off and rushed over. Everything seemed to have happened incredibly quickly, and less than 3 minutes had passed. Seeing the soldiers charging over, Zhao Fu said to the others, "Hurry and leave." The others knew that the situation was quite urgent, so they obeyed Zhao Fu's orders and quickly vanished. Zhao Fu looked at the green-robed elder on the ground. He had never expected the plan to go so smoothly. He had used the 12 assassin leaders to make the City Lord lower his guard, then had Xianru attack from the front to distract the City Lord while he, the real attacker, attacked from behind. Another reason why the plan had gone so successfully was because Zhao Fu had used the Death Dagger, which required the user's life force. He had used it once when killing God Ker's clone, and the effects had been quite good. The final reason was because he had used the Poison Dragon Liquid, which would be able to take down even a dragon. Zhao Fu had obtained this during the Divine Fish Festival and finally found a use for it. 518 Won't you surrender? The green-robed elder on the ground was on his dying breath, and blood continuously flowed from his mouth. If it wasn't for his City Lord Seal's power stemming his injury, he would died a long time ago. After all, Zhao Fu had used the Death Dagger, half a year of his lifespan, and the Poison Dragon Liquid to kill the green-robed elder. Seeing the system main city soldiers rushing over, Zhao Fu did not hesitate and squatted down, tensing his hand into a knife hand strike and piercing into the green-robed elder's abdomen. He took out a shining green City Lord Seal, and the green-robed elder howled and immediately died. It was not just because of Zhao Fu's attack, it was also because he was unable to stop the invasion of the deathly aura and poison after losing the City Lord Seal. Following this, Zhao Fu put away the green-robed elder's corpse and turned into a ray of light as he flew towards where the city heart was. Everyone in the system main city was greatly shocked as they received system announcements that their city lord had died, causing Demon Tree City to immediately erupt into chaos. "You killed our city lord, I'll kill you." Demon Tree City's 3 great generals flew towards Zhao Fu, and one of them, a big man, roared as he looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu turned to look at the 3 people and coldly laughed as he drew the Sky Demon sword. He casually swung out, sending out a massive black sword light that hit the 3 great generals and sent them flying back. It was unclear whether they were still alive or dead. Trying to attack him without a city lord seal was simply seeking death. However, Zhao Fu ignored the 3 of them and rushed to where the city heart was, and he quickly chose to conquer the city. System announcement. Congratulations, you have conquered a system main city and obtained 5,000 achievement points. System announcement. Because you're a legatee and have conquered a system main city, you have obtained a large amount of this region's fate. System announcement. You have relocated a system main city and obtained 860,000 experience point. System announcement. Congratulations, you have obtained 200 war points. Zhao Fu ignored those system announcements and kicked off the ground, turning into a ray of light that shot into the sky, breaking through the roof of the city hall. Boom. A spear light and a sword light suddenly flashed, containing immense power as they shot towards Zhao Fu. The other 2 city lords had arrived. Zhao Fu dodged the attacks, but he was forced to stop. He looked at the 2 city lords behind him, who both looked incredibly furious, and it was as if they were determined to kill Zhao Fu. "Right now, you don't have an advantage anymore. If you submit to Great Kin, I can spare you," Zhao Fu said confidently. However, the 2 city lords coldly harumphed and chose to directly act. In response, Zhao Fu turned and flew away, not showing any intention to fight with them. They weren't alone, as there were also countless soldiers charging over, so Zhao Fu was not so stupid as to fight to the death with them. Swish, swish, swish. Countless arrows flew over like bolts of lightning, and Zhao Fu immediately cast his king's domain. The arrows hit the king's domain like raindrops, and because there were so many of them, they caused the king's domain to slightly crack. Seeing this, Zhao Fu used his city lord seal's power to increase his speed. In response, the 2 city lords also activated their city lord seals and continued to chase after him. However, very soon, Zhao Fu had flown outside of the city and stood in the air looking at them. The 2 city lords stopped, not daring to step out because they could sense some danger. Seeing this, Zhao Fu lightly laughed. "What, are you not going to chase me anymore?" Soldier Forest's city lord coldly harumphed and said, "Just call out the people you have waiting, we won't fall for your trap." "Really now?" Zhao Fu asked, but he did not ask for his hidden city lords to reveal themselves. He then asked, "Won't you 2 surrender? If you surrender, I'll treat both of you and all of your residents as subjects of Great Kin, and you will continue to be city lords. We won't have to continue fighting like this. You won't have to die, nor do your cities have to be destroyed. We'll never agree." The woman in white replied icily. Seeing this, Zhao Fu gave up on trying to make them submit. Now that there were only 2 city lords left, they were at a complete disadvantage. If he had been able to convince them to surrender, Great Kin could have united the Forest of Horrors and would not have had to continue fighting like this. Such a stalemate would not be beneficial to either side, and it would instead benefit the other dynasty legatees. After all, not developing meant going backwards because all of the other dynasties were rapidly developing. If Great Kin continued this stalemate, their growth would be greatly slowed. Since Zhao Fu knew that they were unwilling to surrender, there was no use in trying to convince them. He decided to fly away, but the 2 city lords refused to follow him. Seeing Zhao Fu casually fly away, the 2 city lords could only angrily gnash their teeth, but they could do nothing about it. After Demon Tree City's city lord died, Demon Tree City's residents and players all panicked, not knowing what to do. Now, only 2 system main cities remained in the Forest of Horrors. Seeing these players and residents, the 2 city lords decided to each take half of them, making the players and residents incredibly grateful. This was because after losing their city, they would be defenseless if Great Kin attacked again. The sun gradually rose over the horizon, and the rays that fell on the players' faces revealed a completely different expression. They were no longer as confident and worry-free. In just a night, they had lost a system main city. How could they still feel as confident? It was an incredibly grave blow to them. Even though they had not lost any people, they had lost an incredibly solid defensive position, making it more difficult for them to group together. Now, many of them became like a pile of loose sand that was easy to blow away. The players desperately prayed that nothing would happen to the remaining 2 system main cities. Now, the city lords and factions leaders all met together to discuss what to do. Not only did they have to prepare defenses, but they also had to be ready for battle. If Great Kin came and attacked, they could not be as relaxed as they were in the past. If they lost another system main city, they would be doomed. Back at Great Kin, Zhao Fu had already re-established Demon Tree City and given the city lord seal to Zhao Jian. Now, Great Kin City had 11 city lords, 8 of them were the city lords of system main cities, while 3 of them were city lords of basic cities. Great Kin had once again become a bit more powerful. At the same time, Zhao Fu also heard about Demon Tree City's players and residents taking refuge in the 2 other system main cities. Each of the remaining system main cities now had at least a battle force of 1.7 million people, and this was not including the countless player villages that could help. Zhao Fu thought about getting rid of the player villages in the wilderness. This way, they would not be able to help the system main cities, but after thinking about it, he decided to give up on that idea. 519 evil spirits. This was because the player villages were scattered all over the place in the wilderness, and they would require a lot of time to find. Moreover, after destroying a few, the rest would most likely send all of their people to the system main cities, which would make their job in attacking the system main cities even more difficult. As such, Zhao Fu decided that they would first attack the system main cities before getting rid of these player villages. That way, they would not have any way to resist. However, now, each system main city had a battle force of around 1.7 million people, which was not to be taken lightly. In that case, should they do another assassination? After what had happened, they would most likely be incredibly wary, so it was unlikely that such a thing would work again. Moreover, the players and residents would make things quite difficult as well. Zhao Fu could not think of anything, so he asked for all of the information on the 2 system main cities and looked into them in detail, hoping to find something of value. However, after looking through them, Zhao Fu still had nothing, making him feel quite frustrated. "Your Majesty, your tea's ready," a female attendant said as she brought up a pot of tea. Suddenly, Zhao Fu thought of something. He ordered his people to go to the various regions and buy all the lethal poisons they could get their hands on. Their target this time was the ordinary people. Even though the city halls would be heavily guarded, making it difficult to sneak in, because of how big system main cities were, it was impossible to secure every area. As long as they were able to sneak in and put poison into the water wells, they would be able to poison the ordinary people. Moreover, Zhao Fu had the 30,000 skeleton mages and the disaster cavalrymen, so combining them together, he would be able to greatly reduce the other side's forces. Thinking to there, Zhao Fu discussed this with his generals in order to prevent any oversight on his part. Afterward, Great Kin started to buy in bulk all kinds of lethal poisons. In total, they had bought 100,000 vials of poison and spent a lot of money. However, this money wasn't much to Great Kin. What Great Kin lacked least was money, and if spending money could resolve this issue, they would be more than happy to spend it. This time, Great Kin would once again be relying on assassins and as well as the disaster cavalrymen and skeleton mages. There was no need to send in too many assassins, as sending in too many would result in them being discovered. Zhao Fu chose 200 elite assassins and gave them spatial rings filled with lethal poisons. Following this, the operation began. It was once again nighttime when Zhao Fu brought his group of people near Soldier Forest. Right now, Soldier Forest was not as complacent as Demon Tree City had been back then. The entire city was lit up, making it difficult for anyone to sneak in. However, Zhao Fu was still able to bring his people in front an inconspicuous corner of the city and sneak into Soldier Forest. The security within the city was quite tight. There were soldiers continuously patrolling the streets, making Zhao Fu and his people incredibly wary, and they executed the plan incredibly carefully. Great Kin's assassins moved around in stealth, heading to the water wells to pour in the poison. After successfully pouring the poison into the water, it mixed in with the water without changing the color or smell, making it impossible for ordinary people to find out that there was something with the water. Now that they had successfully completed this stage of the plan, they had to wait for an opportunity. Early the next morning, just as the sun rose, a faint fog descended on the city. It was quite cold during winter mornings, but the residents still got up and started to cook, preparing for the new day. After taking in the refugees from Demon Tree City, the 2 system main cities, which had been quite empty, once again became quite lively again. After nothing had happened the previous night, everyone let out a sigh of relief. However, this peaceful morning was soon destroyed. Cries of horror sounded out, causing everyone to feel quite shocked. They then found that many people had collapsed to the ground with blood leaking out of their mouths, and they soon died. What was going on? Many people could not understand what was happening, and the city lords and the leaders of factions soon heard about this. After looking over the bodies, physicians found that these people had been poisoned to death. After doing some tests, they found that the water within the wells contained lethal poison. After hearing about this, the countless players felt incredibly furious and terrified. They were furious that Great Kin had dared to sneak in during the night and shamelessly put poison into their water, and they were terrified because they had almost been poisoned to death. Soon, the matter of the poison sent the 2 system main cities into chaos. The city lords quickly gave the order not to drink any well water, and they estimated that roughly 200,000 from each city had been poisoned to death. Many of these people were whole families, whether they were male or female, elderly or young. Anyone who had drunk water from the well or eaten food prepared with water from the well had died without exception. These scenes made the two city lords extraordinarily furious, and they resolved themselves to kill this dynasty legatee. Countless leaders of player factions couldn't help but sigh. All was fair in love and war, so even though Great Ken had acted shamelessly, in the end, victory was the most important thing. Those who hoped that their enemies would not use underhanded schemes were essentially idiots. Fair, just, and direct fights only happened in stories, while reality was much crueler. Zhao Fu stood in the air outside Soldier Forest and watched all of this happen. He then gave the order for the next stage of the plan to be set into motion. The 10 disaster cavalrymen raised their black swords and roared as 10 black pillars of light rushed into the air, creating a massive black magic formation. Seeing this black magic formation, the residents of Soldier Forest felt incredibly uneasy. The indigenous residents who had died became skeletons, and they started to attack those around them. Immediately, Soldier Forest descended into chaos. Many people felt terrified and wanted to escape, while others rushed up to kill the skeletons. The sound of fighting and howls sounded out, sounding incredibly chaotic. The skeleton mages then used their evil spirit summoning skill, summoning transparent evil spirits that flew towards the players. Even though these evil spirits were not much use against Stage 1 soldiers, they were a great threat to ordinary players. The players defending the city walls did not notice the evil spirits floating towards them. After the evil spirits invaded their heads, the players howled as their expressions became twisted. Everyone around them had no idea what was going on, and they hurriedly came over to look at them. However, at that moment, the players who had been possessed started to madly attack those who came to check up on them. The others were greatly surprised to see these people attacking their own allies but quickly started counterattacking. The 30,000 skeleton mages could summon and control 30,000 evil spirits, which meant that they could control 30,000 players. As these players started to attack each other, Soldier Forest became even more chaotic. After the players possessed by the evil spirits were killed, the evil spirits continued to find more targets and continued their killing spree. This was why Zhao Fu had chosen to act against Soldier Forest first. Holy Light City would have many things that could suppress the undead and evil creatures. 520 battle on two sides. Soldier Forest became incredibly chaotic, but things were not good at Holy Light City either. This was because Zhao Fu had sent all of Great Kin's soldiers to attack Holy Light City. Of course, they were not actually attacking. They were only making feints to tie down Holy Light City's people in order to allow Great Kin to take down Soldier Forest with more ease. Seeing the soldiers outside, Holy Light City's people felt quite nervous. Even though they had 3 times Great Kin's battle force, after these continuous losses, they had lost their confidence as well. Hurry and alert Soldier Forest that Great Kin is attacking and tell them to help. Seeing Great Kin's soldiers, countless people hurriedly called out. As long as the system main cities worked together, they would be able to resist Great Kin. Fire. Beichi was leading Great Chi's soldiers in this attack, and the soldiers obeyed Beichi's command, shooting out arrows as they started to attack Holy Light City. Soldier Forest soon received news of Holy Light City being attacked, but they had no resources to spare. Not only were they facing skeletons, but many players had also suddenly gone berserk. What's more, as long as the black magic formation in the sky remained there, any indigenous residents who died would immediately become skeletons. Outside Holy Light City, the woman in white glared at Beichi and yelled, "Why would you pledge your loyalty to such a person and help him? You're taking the side of a tyrant." The woman in white thought that Beichi was also an indigenous resident and could not understand why he would be loyal to someone so shameless, ruthless, and bloodthirsty. Facing the woman in white's words, Beichi replied with a cold expression, "That's how the world is. If you want to live and become stronger, you have to respect the laws of this world. Everything His Majesty has done is for Great Kin, and no one has the right to criticize him. Also, you're already doomed to lose. His Majesty is lacking concubines, so it's best that you surrender and become His Majesty's concubine. Otherwise, everyone in this city will die." The woman in white angrily harumphed. She had wanted to try to convince him to surrender, yet he was telling her to become that person's concubine. How was that possible? Do you really think you can take down Holy Light City with just 450,000 soldiers? Let's see if you can do it. The woman in white attacked first, sending out a white sword light that was dozens of meters long. It gave off a holy yet terrifying power as it slashed towards Beichi. In response, Beichi's gaze became icy as a large amount of a blood-red aura rose up from his body. He slashed out with his 7 murders sword, shattering the white sword light. The woman in white felt quite surprised and felt that Beichi was different compared to other city lords. However, she did not think too much about it and continued to attack. The two of them started a massive battle in the air, while the soldiers below continued to fire arrows. The battle seemed incredibly intense, but Greatkin didn't intend on starting an actual fight. Back at Soldier Forest, the city lord looked at the chaotic state of the city and felt quite worried. Holy Light City was also being attacked, so he wanted to take people to help. Otherwise, if one of their system main cities was lost, the other would fall quickly as well. However, there was nothing he could do by worrying. The skeletons within the city were still madly attacking players and residents, and without getting rid of them, they would not be able to head over to Holy Light City. Moreover, he had no idea what was going on with those maddened players. After killing one wave of them, another wave would come. Moreover, with the black magic formation, as soon as indigenous residents died, they would become skeletons, which was incredibly disadvantageous for them. The city lord wanted to destroy the black magic formation first. Without that magic formation, they would be able to get rid of the skeletons easily. They would then be able to deal with the maddened players and head over to Holy Light City. However, a black cloaked figure appeared in front of him. Seeing this person, the city lord did not feel surprised. He gripped his spear and prepared to break through. However, at that moment, even more figures appeared around him, 10 of them in total. This caused his expression to become one of shock, as all 10 of them were city lords. In actuality, Zhao Fu's plan was not only to get rid of the ordinary people but also to take advantage of the chaos to get rid of Soldier Forest's city lord. Attack! Time was of the essence, so Zhao Fu immediately gave the order. The 9 others exploded out with strength and started to attack Soldier Forest's city lord. Spear lights, saber lights, sword lights, talisman papers, all sorts of terrifying attacks flew at Soldier Forest's city lord. Soldier Forest's city lord gripped his spear and roared, sweeping out with his spear and creating a wild gust of wind. A massive black crescent moon, giving off a shocking aura, also burst forth. Boom! A massive explosion resulted as the black crescent moon collided with many incoming attacks. The black crescent moon instantly shattered, while the remainder of the attacks continued on towards Soldier Forest's city lord. Soldier Forest's city lord used his spear to block in front of him, but he was still sent flying. He crashed onto the ground and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Sar wielded his large saber and rushed up, chopping down with a force that could split a mountain, and Soldier Forest's city lord could only once again use his spear to block. However, just as he blocked this attack, Wang Jian slashed towards him with a shocking sword light. Soldier Forest's city lord could only roll and retreat, once again blocking with his spear. Immediately, he was forced to slide back 10 or so meters. Xianru took out a green talisman paper and held it between 2 fingers as she chanted an incantation. Following this, the talisman paper burst into flames, and a green vine burst forth from underground and wrapped up Soldier City's city lord. Soldier City's city lord was greatly startled and immediately tried to break free, but Mengtian gripped his spear and slammed it against Soldier City's city lord's chest. Bang! A few of Soldier City's city lord's ribs were broken, and he once again flew away. Wei Liao, who had been waiting for him, sent out a green wolf that bit onto the flying city lord. Its sharp teeth pierced into his body, causing Soldier City's city lord to grunt, and he pierced his spear into the wolf's head. The green wolf collapsed into traces of a green aura, and Soldier City's city lord crashed onto the ground. By now, he was already heavily wounded. After receiving the attacks of multiple city lords, it was impossible for him not to be injured. However, Soldier City's city lord showed no intention of backing down. He looked at his enemies in front of him, his eyes filled with battle intent. The battle here caused many of the system main city's soldiers to realize what was going on, and they hurried over. Zhao Fu casually looked over at the soldiers before looking back at Soldier City's city lord. A terrifying aura swept out from him as he leaned forward and kicked off the ground, causing the ground to crack. Zhao Fu's body turned into a black blur, shooting forward as fast as lightning, and he reached Soldier City's city lord in an instant. His hand contained immense power as he slammed it against the city lord's chest. Soldier City's city lord was heavily wounded and had no power to defend, and after taking this strike, he was blasted back with his chest slightly caved in. Blood flowed out of his lips, making him seem quite wretched. Zhao Fu looked at Soldier City's city lord and said, "You only have 2 options, you can surrender, or you can die." 521 The color black hurry and save the city lord. Before Soldier Forest's city lord could reply, a few thousand soldiers rushed over. Zhao Fu did not even bother looking at them as he coldly ordered, "Kill them all." "Yes." The 9 others said as they turned into black blurs and rushed towards the thousands of system main city soldiers. Soldier Forest's city lord also got into position to attack again as he looked at Zhao Fu, his eyes filled with battle intent as he said, So what if I die? An explosion sounded out as his spear pierced towards Zhao Fu with an incredibly sharp aura. Right after Soldier Forest's City Lord finished speaking, he immediately attacked. Zhao Fu stood his ground and slightly sighed. In actuality, Zhao Fu was not a bloodthirsty person. Every time, he would ask if the other side would surrender, as he was not fond of pointless killing. If the other side refused to surrender, he couldn't just let them off, as they would most likely return to take revenge. The spear shot over like a bolt of lightning, but Zhao Fu did not move. Only until it was about to hit Zhao Fu did he finally act. He lightly grasped the incoming spear as his other hand instantly stabbed into the City Lord's heart, tightly gripping it and ripping it out. The Soldier Forest's City Lord's corpse powerless fell to the ground. Everything had happened in the blink of an eye. A black City Lord seal floated out of the corpse, and Zhao Fu threw away the bloody heart and grabbed the City Lord seal. Soldier Forest's City Lord had already been heavily wounded, so Zhao Fu was able to kill him quite easily. This was because Zhao Fu's Great Kin seal was strengthened by the power of 10 other City Lord seals, and it far surpassed any ordinary City Lord seal. Even if Soldier Forest's City Lord had been in peak condition, Zhao Fu could have easily killed him. Elsewhere, the thousands of System Main City soldiers had been massacred by the 9 City Lords, and corpses lay strewn all over the ground, with blood dyeing the ground. After the City Lord died, Soldier Forest became even more chaotic. Many players ran in fear, and some of the soldiers and residents furiously ran over to where Zhao Fu was. Zhao Fu quickly flew into the city and went into the city hall. He chose to conquer and relocate Soldier Forest. System announcement. Congratulations, you have conquered a System Main City and obtained 5,000 achievement points. System announcement. Because you're a legatee and you have conquered a System Main City, you have obtained a large amount of this region's fate. System announcement. You have relocated a System Main City and obtained 860,000 experience point. System announcement. Congratulations, you have obtained 200 war points. After relocating Soldier Forest, Zhao Fu and his people stood in the air, looking down at the countless terrified players and residents. Zhao Fu breathed out and said, "Light fires and lock down Soldier City." After saying this, his subordinates conveyed the order, and Great Kin's assassins, who were hidden below, started to light fires. In order for the flames to spread faster, they also poured oil everywhere, resulting in a large fire. The 10 people standing in the air turned into rays of light and shot out in different directions until they formed a circle around Soldier Forest. Boom! A massive sound rang out as various City Lord seals shot into the sky, giving off a shocking aura. They gave off intense lights of different colors and formed 10 massive orbs of light that illuminated their surroundings. The power of 10 City Lord seals was simply immense, and it caused even the weather to change. Not only did the six-eyed flood dragon at the center of the Forest of Horrors awake, but the woman in white also noticed this as she fought with Beichi, and her expression fell. Only now did she realize that Great Kin's target had not been Holy Light City but Soldier Forest. Something must have happened at Soldier Forest, but what was with those auras? Could it be that the other side had more than 3 City Lords? What have you all done to Soldier Forest? The woman in white roared as she asked. Beichi ignored her question. Since His Majesty's operation at Soldier Forest was successful, Beichi continued to tie down the woman in white. The flames in Soldier Forest burned intensely, and some of the flames were dozens of meters tall. The temperature they gave off was enough to melt iron, and everyone 10,000 meters away could feel this heat. As the massive flames spread, the countless players and residents escaped outside because they found that the teleportation channels were not working. However, after going to the city gates, they found that a formless barrier was blocking them, locking them within the city. They desperately and madly attacked the barrier, but it would not be destroyed so easily. After all, it was something formed by 10 city lords. The great flames quickly spread towards them, scaring the countless people into attacking the barrier even more desperately. After finding that it was impossible to destroy the barrier, they could only kneel down and hope that Great Kin would spare them. "We were wrong. Please spare us. We promise to never go against Great Kin again. I surrender. I really surrender. I don't want to be burned to death. I'll call you my granddaddy, but please spare us. We will never go against Great Kin again. We can even help you take down the other system main city. Please spare us. A great person should have mercy." Zhao Fu looked down at these people and had no intention of sparing them. He knew the character of these players. If he spared them, they would turn against him once again in the face of benefits. As such, he did not want to spare them. Even though he could use them to attack Holy Light City, they could betray him at any moment, so he did not dare to use them. The flames quickly spread throughout the entire city and devoured everything in their path. People began to be swept into the sea of flames, and they were incinerated before they could even cry out. The flames did not stop burning even after 4 to 5 hours, and it seemed that everyone had died. After this, Zhao Fu and his people returned to Great Qin. Only a small portion of people had survived. These people had jumped into the water wells. Even though the water was poisoned, as long as they didn't drink any, they would be fine. As such, some of the people were able to escape the calamity. News of Great Qin burning millions of people to death quickly spread into the real world, as those who had been burned to death immediately went on the Heaven Awakened World Forum and cursed at Great Qin. Great Qin's conduct shocked quite some people, but most people already knew just how ruthless, bloodthirsty, and merciless Great Qin was. Burning people to death was just one more example of its tyranny. Countless people already knew the true nature of Great Qin. They believed that it was evil incarnate and far crueler than anyone could imagine. It was simply a synonym for darkness, and it was no wonder that its color was the color black. Over at Holy Light City, Great Qin's soldiers started to retreat. Seeing this, the ordinary people, who had no idea what was going on, started to cheer, as they thought that they had once again defeated Great Qin. Only the woman in white's expression was quite unsightly as she watched Great Qin's soldiers retreat because it was most likely that something had happened to Soldier Forest. Following this, news of what had happened at Soldier Forest quickly spread to Holy Light City, sending the entire city into a panic. 522 Zhang family. After Zhao Fu returned to Great Qin, he re-established Soldier Forest and gave the city lord seal to Zhangdo. Now, Great Qin had yet another city lord. Now, only Holy Light City was left in the Forest of Horrors. The size of its army and population were similar to Soldier Forest, but now that Soldier Forest had been destroyed, Great Qin did not have to fear Holy Light City as much. Now, by itself, Holy Light City was essentially unable to defend against Great Qin and was fated to lose. Zhao Fu gathered his generals and started to discuss how to take down Holy Light City. After taking down Holy Light City, Great Qin would have truly united a region and established a firm cornerstone to re-establish Great Qin. When he thought of this, Zhao Fu couldn't help but feel a bit excited. After some discussion, Great Qin quickly came up with a battle plan. A day later, Zhao Fu came with a disaster cavalryman to where Soldier Forest had originally been. The ground here was burnt black, and only ruins remained. Only a few walls were still standing, and everything else had been burnt to a crisp. Zhao Fu gave the order, and the disaster cavalryman started to act. Black pillars of light shot up into the clouds as a black magic formation appeared, and skeletons slowly climbed out of the ruins. There were roughly 300,000 skeletons, as most of the corpses had been burnt into nothing. It was unlikely that the corpses that had survived could be refined, so Zhao Fu decided to try to see if they could be turned into skeletons and was surprised that it was possible. Apart from the ordinary skeletons, some of the skeletons had been summoned from the corpses of Stage 1 soldiers, so they were naturally much more powerful than the ordinary skeletons. After taking care of these matters, a figure came to Zhao Fu's mind. After thinking about it, Zhao Fu decided to sneak into Holy Light City. "Miss Zhang, there's someone outside who says that he's your friend and wants to see you." Hearing this, Zhang felt a bit curious and went outside to see who it was. After going outside, a black-cloaked, mysterious-looking person appeared before her. Zhang immediately recognized this person, ran over, and said happily, "Zhao Xin, you're finally back. Are you alright?" Seeing how concerned Zhang seemed, Zhao Fu smiled and said, "I'm fine." "What is it?" Hearing Zhao Fu's reply, Zhang let out a sigh of relief and said, "Westfall restaurant was closed down, and I was worried that something had happened to you." "So it was that." Zhao Fu smiled and replied, "It's not a big deal, I'm here to take you to leave." "Take me to leave? To where?" Zhang asked, blushing. Zhao Fu realized that his words were quite ambiguous, and he quickly explained, "Holy Light City is about to be attacked. I found a teleportation channel to another region, so quickly prepare and leave." Zhang felt quite shocked. She understood that Holy Light City would be attacked by Great Qin soon, and Holy Light City had descended into chaos. Everyone was trying to think of how to escape, as it would not be a good idea to stay in Holy Light City any longer. After all, it was impossible for them to defend against Great Qin. Soldier Forest had the same strength as them, yet they had all been locked in the city by Great Qin and burned to death. With just 10 city lords, Great Qin had been able to burn more than 1 million people to death. They didn't want to end up the same as Soldier Forest. As such, many factions returned to their village's headquarters, while others went to the void zones and tried to cross to another region. The Forest of Horrors essentially already belonged to Great Qin, and staying here would be seeking death. The number of players in Holy Light City continuously dwindled. Since it was impossible to defend the city, they were not willing to stupidly wait here for death. With how ruthless Great Qin was, how could it treat them well? Many factions quickly gathered their things and left. If they waited until Great Qin arrived, they would not even be able to run. This was the same for the Zhang family. Great Qin would definitely destroy a family like them. Zhang Feng felt quite worried and prepared to take the risk to escape the forest of horrors. He knew the consequences of going against Great Kin. As such, he had told Zhang Re to leave with him. This was because Zhang Re was a member of the main family of the Zhang family, and if she stayed, she would most likely die a true death. After all, Great Kin could bring people from the real world into the Heaven Awakened world. Even though they could not do this on a large scale, Great Kin could capture the leaders of the various factions. Once they were caught by Great Kin, they would die a true death. This was why all of the factions' leaders were desperately running, as none of them wanted to die. As the older brother, Zhang Feng wanted to take care of his little sister and did not want anything to happen to her. There was also the fact that Zhang Re would be able to provide them with support in terms of resources. Zhang Re knew that Great Kin was about to attack Holy Light City. Holy Light City was on high alert, and an oppressive aura covered the entire city. If the indigenous residents surrendered they could live, but as players, Great Kin would not spare them. As such, Zhang Re understood that she had to escape. However, she had never expected that Zhao Fu would have a teleportation channel to another region. This meant that she would not have to pass through a void zone with great difficulty and would be able to directly go to another region. She had never expected that Zhao Xin would think of her at such a critical time, and she sweetly smiled and said, "I've already prepared everything and can leave at any time." Zhao Fu nodded and prepared to send Zhang Re and some of Great Kin workers out of the region. Right now, Zhao Fu would not easily trust players, but since they had worked for Great Kin, he decided to send them off and give them some money as compensation. At that moment, Zhang Re suddenly thought and asked, Zhao Xin, can I bring some people from the Zhang family as well?" Even though the Zhang family had not treated her very well, it was still her family, so she couldn't help but think of the Zhang family. The Zhang family's people? Zhao Fu hadn't wanted to spare them, as they had also participated in this matter. However, because of Zhang Re, he didn't want to destroy all of their forces here. After thinking about it, since the Zhang family would have lost a lot of strength, numbers, and fate after this event, facing Zhang Re's expectant gaze, Zhao Fu decided to nod and agree. "That's great. Thank you so much, Zhao Xin." Zhang Re said happily, and she couldn't help but hug his arm. Zhao Fu did not think too much about this intimate action and was instead thinking about something else. He didn't want to hide things from Zhang Re any longer, so he said seriously, "Zhang Re, Great Kin can let off the Zhang family this time, but I hope there won't be a next time. Else, I really will destroy the Zhang family. Also, my name isn't Zhao Xin but Zhao Fu." Zhao Fu took off his hood, revealing his handsome face as well as his noble and overbearing aura. Upon hearing Zhao Fu's words, Zhang Re's face became pale. She had never thought that Zhao Fu was actually someone from Great Kin. She had heard Zhao Fu's name somewhere. That's right, Great Kin's legatee's representative in the real world was Zhao Fu. Could the person in front of her be Great Kin's legatee's representative? 523 Will we meet again? Zhang Re had never thought that Zhao Fu's true identity would be so terrifying. Just from his status alone, let alone the Zhang family, even dynasty legatees had to treat him with fear and respect. With how monstrous Great Kin was, there was not a single faction that did not fear it. As Great Kin's legatee's representative, Zhao Fu's status within Great Kin was definitely quite high. No wonder Zhao Fu was so powerful, he had Great Kin standing behind him. Zhang Re then thought about Zhao Fu's words. She could not control the Zhang family, and she knew what would happen as a result of them opposing Great Kin. However, she had never thought that Great Kin would spare them. It was most likely because her relationship with Zhao Fu that Great Kin had decided to spare the Zhang family. If that was the case, Zhao Fu would most likely be under great pressure within Great Kin, especially since he had to face Great Kin's ruthless and bloodthirsty legatee. When she thought of this, Zhang Re let go of Zhao Fu's arm. Zhao Fu had already helped her so much, and she did not want him to suffer because of her. "Zhao Fu, I think I might stay," Zhang Re said as she lowered her head. Hearing this, Zhao Fu felt quite shocked. Looking at her expression, he realized what she was thinking and lightly laughed as he said, "If you don't leave, wouldn't that mean that I did all of this for nothing? Plus, aren't we friends? But you've done so much for me already." Zhang Re looked up at Zhao Fu with teary eyes, feeling incredibly guilty. "Well, you can pay me back in future then," Zhao Fu said as he lightly smiled. Everything he did for Zhang Re was not a big deal to him, so he did not mind. Hearing Zhao Fu's answer, Zhang Re said seriously, "What would you like? I'll do my best to repay you." Of course, Zhao Fu did not want anything from her, but seeing how serious she was, he smiled, saying, "I haven't thought about it yet, but we need to quickly leave. We don't have much time, and Great Kin will attack at any moment." Hearing this, Zhang Re realized the time was of the essence, so she nodded and quickly went to find the Zhang family's people, while Zhao Fu gathered all of the people who had worked for him before. "Boss, I don't want to leave you. In the future, I still want to work for you," A group of women surrounded Xiaofu as they sadly said their goodbyes. They all used to be waitresses at the Westfall restaurant, and because Great Ken had run the Westfall restaurant for such a long time, they were all quite familiar with Xiaofu. He had been a good boss, and they all quite liked him. "Boss, where's my master? Why isn't she leaving? Don't tell me you did something to my master." Hueco was blocked by the many women and could only yell out. Hearing this, Xiaofu felt quite speechless and replied, "Don't worry about your master. She'll be fine." Xiaofu had long since investigated Hueco's identity and found that he was the descendant of the Han Dynasty's famed general, Hueco. However, Xiaofu did not plan on recruiting him as a general, as he could feel that Hueco only desired to be a chef. Following this, Xiaofu sent them off and waited for Zhongr. After a while, a handsome young man brought over a group of people. It was Zhang Feng, Zhongr's older brother, who controlled everything in the Zhang family. "Brother Zhao. Many thanks for your help." It seemed that Zhongr had not told his true identity to Zhang Feng, so Zhang Feng still thought that he was Zhao Xin. He enthusiastically walked over and started to talk with Xiaofu. Xiaofu chatted with him for a bit before sending them off. In the end, only Zhongr remained. "Will we meet again?" Now that Zhongr knew Xiaofu's identity, she knew that it would be difficult to meet him again. After all, Xiaofu was an important figure in Great Ken and was valued by Great Ken's legatee. In the future, he would be fighting non-stop for Great Ken. Seeing how hopeful Zhongr looked, he smiled and nodded, "I'll come to find you when I have time." Hearing this, Zhongr happily smiled and said, "Please be careful and don't do anything that's too dangerous. I'll be waiting for you, so if you're ever tired, come and find me." Xiaofu felt a warmth within his heart and looked at Zhongr as he also nodded earnestly. Following this, Zhongr stepped into the teleportation channel, and her body instantly vanished and went to a new region. Zhongr looked up at the blue sky and suddenly remembered that the first time she had met Xiaofu, someone had called him Your Majesty. However, Xiaofu's identity was Great Ken's legatee's representative, so why would someone call him Your Majesty? Could it be? Zhongr's expression changed, thinking of a possibility, but she immediately lightly smiled and shook her head. How could Xiaofu be such a terrifying person? After watching Zhongr disappear, Xiaofu sighed, when he was tired. His fate had long since been determined, and there would never be such a day. His life was bound to Great Ken, and Great Ken would only continuously grow or perish. Even though he casually thought about it, he never knew that in the future. Xiaofu waited 2 days for the ordinary players to escape. Even though he didn't want to spare any of them and wanted to kill them all, them leaving would reduce Holy Light City's battle power and reduce the difficulty in sieging the city, so he gave up on killing them. Perhaps he would deal with these people after destroying Holy Light City. When the time came, perhaps they would not be able to escape the Forest of Horrors yet. There were essentially no players left within Holy Light City, and even though the city wanted them to stay and gave out great rewards, no one was willing to remain. After all, they knew that if they lost, they would die, so no rewards would be enough to make them willing to stay. Xiaofu gathered his army and came outside of Holy Light City. The 12 city lords all released their terrifying auras, making it feel as if there was a massive mountain weighing down on Holy Light City. The countless people within the city felt as if their hearts were being gripped by a formless hand, and all of their hair stood on end as they felt an instinctive fear. The 12 city lords' terrifying aura destroyed Holy Light City's confidence, and apart from the 12 city lords, Great Ken's 450,000 soldiers also gave off an austere and bloodthirsty aura. Xiaofu looked at the woman in white and said, "Surrender. There's no chance of victory for you. If you want to fight, then fight. I won't submit to such a cruel and ruthless person like you." The woman in white resolutely refused and gripped her sword, preparing to fight. Xiaofu frowned, saying, "Do you really think you can beat the 12 of us? Even if you have 500,000 people, it won't be possible. Of course, Great Ken might have to pay a price, but if our injuries and casualties are too high, not only will I not accept any surrenders, but I'll also show you what true cruelty is. Whether they are male or female, elderly or young, I'll have their limbs and tongues cut off and their eyes dug out. I'll have them skinned and hung under the sun, allowing them to howl until they turn into dry corpses. However, I'll let you keep living and make you watch all of that. Even if you want to die, you won't be able to. I'll give you one last chance. Will you fight? Or will you surrender?" 524 Region Lord Xiaofu's tone was extremely calm, and his words did not contain any killing intent. However, they caused the hearts of everyone within Holy Light City to feel a chill. They almost felt as if they could see that scene, and looks of terror appeared on their faces. "You!" The woman in white was extremely furious but could not say anything because it was true that Holy Light City had no hope in winning. The outcome would most likely be what the other side had set, and facing the suppression of 12 city lords, she would not even have the opportunity to die. "Are you still going to resist?" The woman in white clenched her fists. If there was even a trace of hope in winning, she would fight till the end. However, after hearing how the other side threatened to torture her residents, she started to hesitate. If they failed, she didn't want to see such a scene. Zhao Fu did not say anything else and looked at the woman in white. A while later, the woman in white asked, "If I surrender, how will you treat my residents?" "I will treat them kindly as my own subjects," Zhao Fu said seriously as he raised his head. Hearing Zhao Fu's reply, the woman in white hesitated for a moment before saying, "I surrender." A trace of a smile appeared on Zhao Fu's face. That was the benefit of having the other side surrender. They had lost nothing while gaining everything. Hearing their city lord's words, most people in Holy Light City let out a sigh of relief. Only a small portion of people was unhappy with this, but they followed their city lord's decision. Zhao Fu quickly ordered the disaster cavalrymen to divert the 300,000 skeletons away. There were too many skeletons, and Zhao Fu could not control all of them. He didn't want the skeletons to go berserk and kill people right after he had accepted their surrender. Following this, Zhao Fu officially took over Holy Light City. Great Qin's soldiers marched into the city, and the system main city soldiers and residents put down their weapons and gathered together. Zhao Fu went to the city hall, and the woman in white's body gave off waves of white light as a white city lord seal floated out of her body. Zhao Fu grabbed the city lord seal and made the city a subsidiary city, causing the city lord seal to become a bit smaller, as some of its power was absorbed by the Great Qin seal. Zhao Fu then went over to the city heart and placed his hand on it, choosing to conquer and relocate it. System announcement. Congratulations, you have conquered a system main city and obtained 5,000 achievement points. System announcement. Because you're a legatee and you have conquered a system main city, you have obtained a large amount of this region's fate. System announcement. You have relocated a system main city and have obtained 860,000 experience point. System announcement. Congratulations, you have obtained 200 war points. Zhao Fu did not care about the usual system announcements, but he was surprised to hear two more system announcements. The first was a nation system announcement, which meant that all Chinese people could hear it. System announcement. Great Qin has unified the Forest of Horrors. Players will no longer spawn in the Forest of Horrors, and Great Qin has obtained the title Region Lord and obtained a large amount of the region's fate. This system announcement was different to the ones from before. Back when Great Qin had destroyed 4 system main cities using skeletons, the system announcement had only said that the 4 system main cities had been conquered and would not spawn any new players. On the other hand, this system announcement stated that Great Qin had unified a region, obtained the title of Region Lord, and a large amount of the region's fate. Zhao Fu thought about it. It was most likely because the Great Qin city was based here, so the system deemed that Great Qin had unified this region. After all, Great Qin was the only faction remaining in the Forest of Horrors. Moreover, the 4 system main cities from before had all been conquered, relocated, and re-established in a different region. If Zhao Fu had re-established them in their original region, that region would have belonged to Great Qin, resulting in even more region fate. The more territory one had, the more fate one would have, and this was not a one-time provision but a continuous provision of fate. After obtaining a large amount of region fate, Great Qin's nation armament and clan armament both leveled up to level 5 and level 4 respectively. Naturally, the nation armament became even more powerful after leveling up, and even a bit of its power was incredibly shocking. Zhao Fu looked at the Region Lord title and found that it was just an ordinary title, not having any effects. After the nation system announcement sounded out, all of China was shaken, even though many of them had been expecting this, as no one could stop Great Qin. Many of them were still incredibly shocked. Great Qin had been the first to unify a region and provided itself with a cornerstone. In the future, it would continue to develop outwards, and the Warring States period had once again begun. The world was once again about to descend into chaos. This created a great pressure on the other dynasty legatees and factions. They had to quickly embark on the road to restore their nation and could not afford to waste any time. There was another system announcement that Zhao Fu had obtained a region treasure box. Looking at the region treasure box in his hand, Zhao Fu felt quite excited but did not plan to open it just yet. After taking care of matters here and going back, he would see what it contained. Following this, Zhao Fu brought Holy Light City's people back to Great Qin. After seeing Great Qin, all of them were incredibly shocked, as it was just as developed as a system main city. After re-establishing Holy Light City, Zhao Fu had Li Si and Shang Yang take care of the residents. As for the woman in white, Zhao Fu called her to a hall. Looking at the pure-looking young woman in front of him, Zhao Fu's attitude became much better, but her face was still incredibly icy. Now that you've submitted to me, you need to follow my orders. However, I know what you're thinking, so I can give you 2 options. The first option is that if you don't want to fight for me, you can still be the city lord of Holy Light City in name and live with your residents. However, I will give the city lord seal to someone else, as I will need it to attack other cities. Moreover, I will also make you a concubine, but I will not lay my hands on you. This too will only be in name only. The second option is that you will follow my orders and serve Great Kin wholeheartedly. As long as you work hard for Great Kin, I will not mistreat you or any of your residents." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, she felt quite surprised that Zhao Fu's attitude towards her became so much better. He had seemed incredibly cruel and merciless before, but now, he seemed much more amicable and was willing to let her make reasonable choices. At the start, the woman in white had given up on hope, as Beichi had mentioned that Zhao Fu was lacking concubines. As such, the woman in white knew that if she surrendered, she would be made one of Zhao Fu's concubines. However, she was surprised that since he wanted to make her a concubine, why would he not lay his hands on her? The woman in white felt quite confused. In actuality, she did not want to follow Zhao Fu's orders and work for Great Kin because she had seen how cruel Great Kin was, and it was something that she could not accept. However, if she handed over her city lord's seal, Holy Light City's status within Great Kin would become ordinary, and they would have no speaking rights. If she had some power, perhaps she would be able to do something for Holy Light City's residents. Thinking about this, the woman in white felt quite troubled. 525 Bad news. Zhao Fu continued to wait silently, not in a hurry for the woman in white's reply. After a while, the woman in white made her decision and said in a negotiating tone, "I want to pick the first option but also the second one as well. I can become your concubine and obey your commands, but I will not participate in anything extremely cruel or bloody." After saying this, the woman in white felt quite nervous. This was because she was trying to negotiate despite being the loser of the fight, and this might cause Zhao Fu to feel angry, resulting in her obtaining nothing in the end. However, Zhao Fu thought for a moment before agreeing, and he felt quite satisfied. This way, he would be able to have her obey him as well as obtain her Phoenix Chi. Now, there was not much else he wanted from her. As for anything extremely cruel or bloody, Zhao Fu felt that nothing that Great Kin had done so far could be characterized as such. However, this was not the same for others, so he decided that if there was something that she decided to be too cruel or bloody, he would send someone else to take care of it. This was not a big deal. In actuality, Zhao Fu did not want to take away City Lord's seal because this would help pacify Holy Light City. Holy Light City had a population of 500,000 people, so he had to take them quite seriously. Seeing Zhao Fu agree, a slight smile appeared on the woman in white's face, and she could finally relax. "What's your name?" Zhao Fu then asked. The woman in white did not feel that there was anything to hide, so she replied, "I'm called Beiru Oksu." Zhao Fu looked at Xianru beside him, and she smiled as she picked up a brush and wrote Beiru Oksu's name on a piece of paper, then handed it to Zhao Fu. Following this, Zhao Fu made Beiru Oksu an imperial concubine, and her massive amount of Phoenix Chi was absorbed by the Emperor Phoenix statute. Beiru Oksu sensed something but did not say anything. Zhao Fu did not have any other matters for her, so he dismissed her. Even though she had been made a concubine, he did not restrict her freedom or make her live with the other concubines. After obtaining the 500,000 residents from Holy Light City, Great Kin's population swelled to 3.32 million people. At the same time, Holy Light City's 130,000 Stage 1 soldiers all joined Great Kin as well. The reason why Holy Light City had 130,000 soldiers was because it had taken in some of the soldiers from Demon Tree City. After Great Kin had killed Demon Tree City's city lord, the residents and soldiers had gone to the two other system main cities. The reason why Great Kin had been able to get so many soldiers for free was because the city lord had surrendered, resulting in there being no obstacles. Zhao Fu gladly took in these soldiers and added them into Great Kin's army. Now, he had 580,000 soldiers, and after recruiting 20,000 more, Great Kin's army now had 600,000 soldiers. Within this army, there were 400,000 Stage 1 soldiers, as Great Kin already had more than 270,000 previously. Now, with another 130,000 system main city soldiers, they had more than 400,000 Stage 1 soldiers, which was a monstrous force. As the city that Zhao Fu had spent the most time in, Zhao Fu knew many of the residents. For example, Qin Nan, the chubby internal affairs minister, the general who had spoken during the auction, the captain who had protected the Westfall restaurant, and the official in charge of real estate. Now, all of these people lowered their heads respectfully whenever they saw him, not daring to say anything. Qin Nan had never thought that Brother Zhao was actually a dynasty legatee and had already taken down Holy Light City. In fact, the noble city lord had even submitted and become his concubine. Thinking back to everything that had happened, Qin Nan felt quite complicated. Even though his relationship with Zhao Fu had been quite good, that was based on his superior authority and Zhao Fu's reliance on him. Now, things were different. Qin Nan was like an ant in front of Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu could kill him whenever he wanted. As such, Qin Nan felt quite afraid. He didn't know if he had unintentionally offended Zhao Fu and was afraid that Zhao Fu would come and take revenge if he had. As for Zhao Fu, he only smiled whenever he thought of those things and did not bother chasing any of them. After taking care of the various matters, Zhao Fu gave the army the day off. The next day, he would begin his big plan. Suddenly, a piece of bad news came, causing Zhao Fu to frown and feel quite troubled. Those people just weren't going to give up. The bad news was that Great Ken had been surrounded and trapped. The various dynasty legatees had once again used the countless ordinary people in the 4 regions surrounding the Forest of Horrors to set up defensive walls to surround the Forest of Horrors. Each of the defensive walls was formed with millions of players, and they had also set up countless isolation barriers, wanting to lock Great Ken into the Forest of Horrors. It was once again the ordinary players who were threatening Great Ken. They were incredibly greedy, and they were once again being used by the dynasty legatees and other factions against Great Ken. Just as he had resolved matters in the Forest of Horrors, even more problems had come, making Zhao Fu feel as if a headache was coming on. Even though these players were quite weak, there were many of them, and they were quite troublesome. Even if he killed them all, Great Ken's development would be slowed down by them, making Zhao Fu feel quite depressed. Moreover, Great Ken had no way of breaking through the isolation barriers, but Zhao Fu wondered if the void crystals could do anything about them. Right now, the Great Ken primarily relied on void crystals to pass through void zones and go to other regions, so perhaps they had the power to break through isolation barriers. Zhao Fu felt quite hopeful as he went into a teleportation channel, but he found that he was still unable to leave the Forest of Horrors. Could it be that Great Ken really was trapped? Suddenly, Zhao Fu remembered that the 3 system main cities had something that could break through isolation barriers. He could use that and see if he could break through. However, after asking Beiruoksu about it, he felt quite disappointed. This was because the thing they had used to break through isolation barriers had been fused with the teleportation channels, and now that he had relocated the system main city, the teleportation channel had been destroyed and was unusable. If he had known about this, he would not have relocated Holy Light City. Now, they were stuck in the Forest of Horrors and could only think of other ways. As such, Zhao Fu could only ask Beishan and some other scholars to see if they could fix that teleportation channel. However, Zhao Fu was not in a hurry to leave. Now that he had unified the Forest of Horrors, he had to get rid of all the factions that did not belong to Great Ken. Whether they were player villages or indigenous resident villages, he had to get rid of all of them. This was because the Forest of Horrors would be the heart of Great Ken in the future, and he could not allow anything unexpected to happen within it. As such, he needed to make the Forest of Horrors completely Great Ken's and get rid of all opposing factions. After all, how could Great Ken be at ease with enemies at the center of its empire? No faction would allow any uncertainty in its headquarters. 526 Seraph. Since there was nothing that they could do about the isolation barriers, they could only put it aside for now. Zhao Fu put most of his attention into military matters, as getting rid of all of the factions within the Forest of Horrors was Great Ken's main mission. However, since the region was so big and the Forest of Horrors had forests all over the place, it was difficult to see far into the distance, and it was difficult for the army to move around. Despite being in the Forest of Horrors for so long, they only controlled everything within 10,000 kilometers. The monumental task of getting rid of all of the remaining factions would take a long time. Of course, getting rid of the remaining forces would also provide Great Ken with more people, resources, and experience point. Boom. Just as Zhao Fu was thinking about this matter, a massive might descended, causing the air to seem to freeze. Everyone in Great Ken was greatly startled and went outside to take a look. In the sky, a 1,000-meter-long black flood dragon had appeared, spiraling around in the sky and looking down at everyone in Great Ken. Seeing that the six-eyed flood dragon dared to came to Great Ken, Beichi and the other city lords exploded out with their city lord seal's power, turning into rays of light that shot into the sky. They gave off a terrifying aura, giving the six-eyed flood dragon a big fright and causing it to retreat far away. "What are you doing? Your lord said that I could come and play." The six-eyed flood dragon's voice was scared and nervous, and it was like a young girl's. Now that Great Ken had so many city lords, any ordinary boss monster would have to run in fear. Hearing the six-eyed flood dragon's words, the city lords felt quite surprised and paused, and Zhao Fu quickly came out. Seeing Zhao Fu, the six-eyed flood dragon felt quite happy and quickly said, "Zhao Fu, your people are bullying me." Zhao Fu couldn't help but laugh, and he told the city lords to withdraw as he flew into the sky and asked the six-eyed flood dragon, "Why have you come here?" The six-eyed flood dragon smiled as she said, "Now that you've become the region lord, the restrictions on me have disappeared. Now, I can go anywhere I want and don't need to stay at the center of the region anymore." Hearing this, Zhao Fu understood. It was likely that the Lord Monster of each region had restrictions, and now that he had conquered the system main cities in this region, the Lord of this region was no longer restricted. You can play here then. However, you have to withdraw your might. Otherwise, it'll have negative effects on others, Zhao Fu said as he smiled. Right now, the greatest variable in the Forest of Horrors was the six-eyed flood dragon. After taking care of this variable, there would not be much left in the Forest of Horrors that could threaten Great Kin. After hearing Zhao Fu's words, the six-eyed flood dragon immediately withdrew her might and said, Zhao Fu, is this fine now? Zhao Fu nodded. The six-eyed flood dragon's might made the atmosphere in Great Kin incredibly oppressive, and ordinary creatures could not withstand it. However, looking at the six-eyed flood dragon's massive body, Zhao Fu asked, are you able to make your body smaller or turn into human form? The six-eyed flood dragon shook her head and said, I can't do that right now. I either need incredibly strong power or I need to evolve into a higher grade creature. Incredibly strong power? Zhao Fu was quite shocked because the six-eyed flood dragon was already quite powerful, yet it was not enough. That meant that every humanoid monster was incomprehensibly powerful. Zhao Fu looked through the information he had obtained from God Kur and found that the existences within the Legacy Land were too weak and that there weren't any high-grade existences within it. However, Zhao Fu could understand this, or else the Heaven Awakened world would have long since been destroyed by those high-grade existences. Zhao Fu. I want to eat yummy things. The six-eyed flood dragon asked like a little young girl requesting snacks. When Zhao Fu was free, he would bring some things that children liked to eat over. Seeing how she was craving food, Zhao Fu had her land on the ground and ordered some people to prepare food for her. After happily eating a big meal, the six-eyed flood dragon decided to leave. However, she was not returning to the depths of the Forest of Horrors but going to another region to see what other good things there were. Before she left, she made sure to tell Zhao Fu that she would be back. From the beginning, the six-eyed flood dragon had not been hostile to Great Kin, and now that she had decided to leave and go exploring, the Forest of Horrors truly belonged to Great Kin. The next day, Great Kin's soldiers had finished resting and began the clearing operation. Of course, Zhao Fu discussed this with his generals first as to how to quickly get rid of the remaining factions. The original method was too slow, so he wanted a new method. After the discussions, Zhao Fu decided to split the 6 million soldiers into 600 teams of 1,000 soldiers. Most ordinary villages only had a few hundred people, so facing their strength, they would not be able to retaliate at all. If they encountered any intermediate villages, advanced villages, or basic towns, multiple teams would group together before attacking. Each team had a pack of grey wolves, 1 kobold, and 1 rat folk with them. With these 3 additions, they would be able to find villages much easier. Because of the grey wolves, kobolds, and rat folk, Great Kin soldiers would be able to find villages much faster and increase Great Kin's clearing speed. In order to not miss any of the factions, the 600 teams conducted blanket searches with Great Kin as the center and expanded out. As for the 12 city lords, they were in charge of controlling the overall situation. They stood in the sky and observed anything in order to prevent any unexpected incidents. They started carrying out the plan, and Zhao Fu let out a breath as he watched the teams of soldiers leave. Now, there would most likely not be any more danger in the Forest of Horrors. Who knew how long Great Kin would take to finish clearing out all of the factions? At the very least, it would take quite a long period of time. Seeing everything stabilize in Great Kin, Zhao Fu was able to relax. He felt that there wasn't much for him to do here, so he decided to return to the real world. His bodyguard had mentioned last time that the family leaders wanted to talk to him, and because it had been quite a long time, he decided to go and take a look. At the same time, he also needed to think about what to do about the suppression of the other dynasty legatees and factions. He couldn't allow this situation to continue and had to think of a way to suppress them. Just as Zhao Fu was about to return to the real world, he suddenly remembered that he still had not opened the region treasure box. The last region treasure box he had opened had given him a reality tree. Zhao Fu wondered what he would obtain this time and opened the box. A blinding white light shined as a crystal floated out of the treasure box. This crystal was as big as a fist and held an abnormal shape. It had no blemishes on it and gave off a faint white light that brought with it a warm energy. Seraph's Heart, a Seraph's Heart that contains a Seraph's purest source energy. It contains extremely powerful holy light attribute energy and can deal an enormous amount of damage against evil creatures. 527 My future man, a Seraph's Heart? Zhao Fu could clearly feel the intense holy light energy within it, and the Sky Demon Sword gave off groans of disgust. After all, angels and demons were enemies to the death, and the disgust that the Sky Demon Sword showed further demonstrated how powerful this Seraph's Heart was. Zhao Fu did not have any use for the Seraph's Heart yet, so he decided to put it away for now and see if he could use it in the future. Zhao Fu then returned to the real world and asked his bodyguard to notify the family leaders that he had woken up and could discuss with them. The bodyguard nodded, and just as he was about to leave, a yell sounded out from outside. "Tell that bastard to let me in." Zhao Fu frowned, because he could tell that it was Feng Shu. The bodyguard looked over at Zhao Fu, who nodded, indicating that she could come in. After the bodyguard left and let Feng Shu in, she stormed in and angrily glared at Zhao Fu, saying, "You already know my status, I'm Great Kin's legatee's woman. Why do I need your permission to come in? Aren't you afraid of being punished by Great Kin's legatee?" Zhao Fu glanced at her and said, "Hurry up and speak if you have anything to say, if you don't, then leave. The Ying family's leaders will be coming soon to discuss important matters." Feng Shu felt quite displeased and coldly harumphed, but she understood that time was short, so she asked, "Is the legatee fine? Has he been hurt?" Zhao Fu felt quite surprised that she would ask such a thing, but he replied, "He's fine, but why do you care so much?" After hearing that Great Kin's legatee was fine, Feng Shu looked visibly relieved. She discourteously sat down on the sofa and replied, "He's my future man, so of course I care about him." "Really now? Aren't you angry that you're just a marriage alliance tool sent over by our family?" Zhao Fu asked. "What is there to be angry about? Plus, I like Great Kin's legatee's domineeringness and his terrifying aura. Also, have you told Great Kin's legatee about me?" "What did he say?" Feng Shu's words started off in a normal tone, but after saying the final sentence, she seemed a bit shy and looked at Zhao Fu expectantly. Seeing how she looked, he couldn't help but inwardly laugh. When had she become so charming? However, facing her question, he replied, "I did, but he didn't say much." "Really?" Feng Shu's expression dimmed, looking quite disappointed. Seeing her like this, Zhao Fu said good-naturedly, "You've never seen Great Kin's legatee before. He might not be what you think he's like." Humphrey. However, Feng Shu harumphed, "You must not have told him how good I was. With my looks, it's impossible for Great Kin's legatee to not be interested. Plus, you dare to belittle Great Kin's legatee? You're dead meat." Zhao Fu's good intentions were completely disregarded by Feng Shu, and he looked at her in frustration as he said, "What do you want?" Feng Shu looked quite pleased as she crossed her arms. She smiled and said, "That's much better. In the future, you need to follow my orders and say good things about me to Great Kin's legatee, as well as tell me what sort of women the legatee likes, and—" "Wait." Seeing that Feng Shu had started rambling with no intention of stopping, Zhao Fu quickly stopped her. "What? Aren't you afraid that I'll tell the legatee what you said before and have you punished?" Feng Shu said as she looked at Zhao Fu threateningly. Zhao Fu felt quite speechless. He could tell her that he was Great Kin's legatee, so he said, "I'll ask Great Kin's legatee to acknowledge you. That should be enough, right?" Feng Shu was happy to the point that she excitedly laughed out loud. Afterwards, the Ying family's leaders entered, and Feng Shu decided to leave. "What is it?" Zhao Fu asked as he looked at the family leaders. "It's not much. We were just worried after hearing that Great Kin had been forced into retreating. Now that Great Kin has unified the Forest of Horrors, the path to Great Kin's restoration has begun, so everything must be going quite well. Is there anything that we can help with?" one of the family leaders said as he smiled at Zhao. Zhao Fu thought about it and said, "There isn't anything you can help with right now, but the Ying family should focus on continuously developing and becoming more powerful. Perhaps you'll be able to help in the future." The family leaders all nodded, signaling that they understood. Another family then said, "What about the people staying outside the Ying family's residence? They've remained there for a long time, and after Great Kin was sent into retreat, many of the factions left, but they still chose to remain. They seem quite determined and eager to serve Great Kin. Can you ask His Majesty if we should continue to have them wait or to receive them?" Zhao Fu did not answer immediately and instead thought for a while. He couldn't have them continue to stay outside, and it would be good for some factions to join Great Kin, as he felt that his forces were not powerful enough yet. "The legatee told me to give them an honorary title first, receive them into the Ying family, and list them as Great Kin's factions. However, this should be in name only, and if we are to truly use them, we must test them properly first." Hearing this, the family leaders all nodded again. Zhao Fu then continued, "Can you tell me about all of the Ying family's forces? Don't leave anything out so that I can make adequate preparations in the future." The family leaders did not hide anything, as Zhao Fu represented Great Kin's legatee and it was most likely Great Kin's legatee who had ordered him to ask, so they told him everything. Zhao Fu listened intently but sighed after hearing everything. Zhao Fu was thinking about how to suppress the other dynasty legatees. He couldn't continue allowing Great Kin to suffer like this, but he could not think of anything. Even though Great Kin was powerful in the Heaven Awakened world, it could only stay in the northern side of the Midland continent and could not affect other places, so it could not suppress the other dynasty legatees. The various dynasty legatees and factions used the real world to affect the Heaven Awakened world, while Great Kin's power was only in the Heaven Awakened world and Zhaofu did not have any power in the real world. Even though the Ying family was quite powerful and Zhaofu could use the Ying family's power, it was not enough because Great Kin had too many enemies. With so many factions joined together, it was impossible for the Ying family alone to stand against them. These factions were giving out rewards in the real world, attracting the ordinary people to resist Great Kin, and the Ying family could do nothing about this, as there were simply too many enemies. If they wanted to also give out quests and incentivize players to attack those factions, they would have to spend an astronomical amount due to the numbers of enemies. Moreover, the Ying family would have to bear all of that by themselves, while their enemies could split the costs among themselves. Zhaofu had no methods within the Heaven Awakened world or in the real world to suppress the other dynasty legatees, making him feel quite helpless. 528 engagement. Following this, the family leaders left, and Zhaofu gave up on thinking as he could not come up with anything. He would have to see if there were any opportunities in the future. He asked his bodyguard to order some food, and he prepared to return to the Heaven Awakened world after eating. At that moment, a phone call came through from his grandpa. Zhaofu felt a bit hesitant. After meeting with them last time, he had rarely come into contact with them. Zhaofu's impression of his cousins was not great but not bad either, but he didn't like his uncle and aunt. The only ones who he felt close to were his grandpa and grandma. If it wasn't for them, he wouldn't bother interacting with that family. Even though Zhaofu could understand why they did the things they did, that did not mean he approved. Ever since Zhaofu had become the proxy family leader, his relative statuses had also risen. They were treated like members of the main family, and not only were they given separate villas to live in, but they also were given a lot of money. Moreover, because of Zhaofu, many people tried to curry favor with them by sending them luxurious and high-class gifts. Now, their lives were hundreds of times better than before. Zhaofu did not care about any of this. Because of his grandparents, he did not say anything about this. After hesitating for a moment, Zhaofu answered the call. After all, they were his only family members in this world. "Hi, Grandpa." His grandpa excitedly laughed as he said, "Fuhrer, remember how we texted you about your cousin's engagement? That's gone by already, but you should hurry over and have lunch with us, don't be late." "Don't worry. We didn't invite anyone else, it's just our family." Hearing how excited his grandpa sounded, he had no heart to refuse and could only agree to go. A while later, Zhaofu arrived at his grandpa's villa with his bodyguards. His grandpa welcomed him in, as he was quite worried that Zhaofu would not come, so he had waited by the door the entire time. After seeing that Zhaofu had arrived, his grandpa happily grasped his hands and brought him inside. There were many people seated around the circular dining table. Apart from his grandma, uncle, auntie, and two cousins, there was also Zhengzhao, the woman Zhaofu's cousins had saved before, and she had started dating his older cousin. It was most likely that the two of them had been engaged. Zhaofu did not care much about this. Zhengzhao's looks were quite good, she had delicate facial features and white skin, and she wore a white, flowery dress. She was sitting with his older cousin, looking quite lovey-dovey. However, after seeing Zhaofu arrive, her attitude slightly changed, but she hid it well so that no one noticed. There was also a woman sitting beside Zhaofu's younger cousin. This woman was also quite pretty, and she had red lipstick on as well as a tight-fitting dress. She was also wearing silk stockings and looked quite pretty and flirtatious. Currently, Zhaofu's younger cousin was putting food into her bowl, looking quite affectionate. They were most likely lovers as well. After Zhaofu was brought in by his grandpa, all of them greeted him with smiles. His identity was incredibly prestigious, and everything they had was because of him. This was especially so for Zhaofu's aunt. She treated him far too well, and as soon as he sat down, she began putting food into his bowl and told him to eat up, look after his body, and that he was welcome to come over at any time. Zhaofu politely smiled, but he knew the truth behind all of this and did not pay it much attention. He decided that he would leave after eating. However, just as Zhaofu ate a few mouthfuls, his aunt said with a flattering smile, "Ah, Zhaofu, you're the Ying family's proxy leader and the most powerful person in the Ying family. Everyone does what you want. Look, your cousins just stay at home all day, do you think you can find a job for them?" Even though they did not have to worry about their daily lives, there was nothing that truly belonged to them, and they could lose it all easily. They didn't have any actual power. As such, they wanted Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun to find a job and actually have some power. Zhaofu's grandpa and grandma did not intervene because they too wanted their grandsons to have something to do. If Zhaofu was willing to help, things wouldn't be too difficult. Zhaofu thought about it, and he could indeed do such a thing. However, if he gave them an unimportant job, they would most likely be displeased, whereas if he gave them a job that was too important, they would be underqualified, and he was worried that things would go wrong. As such, he asked, "Auntie, what would you like them to do?" Just as Zhao Fu's auntie was about to respond, Zhao Fu's younger cousin, Zhao Jun, said first, "I don't want a job, I just want a city creation stone so I can be a leader. Perhaps I'll be able to do great things in the future." After speaking, Zhao Jun excitedly looked at Zhao Fu. "Q's, if possible, give me a city creation stone as well. Rather than working for someone else, I'd rather pave my own path. Plus, those city creation stones are too expensive, and ordinary people can't buy them," Zhao Fu's older cousin, Zhao Hong, said. Zhao Fu's uncle and auntie felt that this would be quite good. Rather than working for someone else, it would be better to create their own factions. In the future, even if the Ying family kicked them out, they would have something to fall back on. They already knew that the real world would be devoured by the Heaven Awakened world, so they had to think about the future. Even though the Ying family looked quite powerful, they understood that Great Ken had made many enemies, so the Ying family might be doomed with it in the future. If Zhao Fu could provide them with city creation stones and they created factions, that would be perfect. After all, they could use Zhao Fu's help and cause their factions to grow even faster, resulting in a better future. "That's right. Zhao Fu, can you prepare 2 city creation stones for us?" his uncle also said. Zhao Fu turned and looked at his grandparents, and seeing how hopeful they looked, he nodded and agreed. Even though city creation stones were quite difficult to obtain for normal people, it was no big deal for Zhao Fu, and there would be no harm in him helping them a bit. Seeing Zhao Fu agree, everyone at the table became incredibly excited, and his uncle and auntie told him to eat up, seeming incredibly caring. "Q's, can you give me a good quality city creation stone, hopefully not an ordinary one? The ordinary one's stats aren't that great. Also, can you give us some resources? Since you're in charge of the Ying family, that shouldn't be too big of a problem." Zhao Jun happily said as he ate a piece of meat. Now they were getting a bit too full of themselves, making Zhao Fu feel quite displeased. Zhao Fu didn't have an obligation to help them, and if it wasn't for his grandparents, he would have long since severed ties with them. However, Zhao Fu couldn't stand them demanding this and demanding that as if they were entitled to those things. 529 Maizioy and Zhao Fu's older cousin Zhao Hong did not want to trouble Zhao Fu, so he said, "It's enough that Zhao Fu's giving us city creation stones, we should take care of the rest ourselves." Hearing this, Zhao Fu's auntie immediately scolded her son. Now that Zhao Fu held so much power within the Ying family, everything would be much better with his support. Zhao Hong was stupid for not taking advantage of this opportunity. "Don't listen to him. Zhao Fu, please give them some help if you're able to," Zhao Fu's auntie said as she smiled. Facing his mother, Zhao Hong didn't say anything. Zhao Fu's grandpa and grandma looked quite awkward. On one hand, they didn't want Zhao Fu to suffer losses, but on the other hand, they also wanted him to help. Zhao Fu inwardly sighed, and in order to avoid any unpleasantness, he could only agree. The atmosphere once again became lively, and everyone else became much more joyful. Zhao Fu just wanted to finish his meal and leave. However, as Zhao Fu started to eat again, a leg touched against his from under the table. Zhao Fu thought that this was an accident, so he did not mind, but that leg started to rub against his, as if it was flirting with him, and it started to move towards his thighs. Zhao Fu frowned and nudged the leg away with his knee. Feeling how soft and slim the leg was, it was most likely a woman's leg. There were only 3 women close enough to do this. The first was Zhang Zhao, but it was most likely not her, as she had a resolute personality and would not do such a thing. The second was his auntie, which was simply impossible. That left the third woman, the flirtatious-looking woman next to his younger cousin. Zhao Fu felt that it was her, but because he couldn't say anything, he only shot her a warning glare. However, this caused the flirtatious-looking woman to laugh and put her arm around Zhao Jun's arm, saying coyly, "Look, Zhao Jun, we've been here for so long, but you still haven't introduced us." The others also realized that they had forgotten about this. Zhao Jun pleasantly smiled as he said, "Q's, this is my girlfriend, Mai Zioyan." After saying this, Zhao Jun then continued, "This is my cousin. The Ying family's proxy family leader and the Great Ken's legatee's representative. Really now? Nice to meet you." Mai Zioyan looked quite surprised and smiled as she formally greeted Zhao Fu. After saying Zhao Fu's identity, Zhao Jun felt incredibly proud. Moreover, after seeing that his girlfriend only politely greeted Zhao Fu after knowing who he was and did not try to curry favor with him, he felt quite happy and felt that he had found a good girlfriend. Zhao Fu's expression was quite cold, because there was now a foot shamelessly rubbing up and down his leg. However, he still politely greeted her back. Even though on the surface Mai Zioyan did not do much but eat some food and chat with Zhao Jun, her foot still had not given up and was stretching towards Zhao Fu's crotch. If it wasn't for the fact that he had confirmed it was her, Zhao Fu would not have thought she could do such a thing. Zhao Fu had no choice but to leave. However, just as he stood up, his grandpa grabbed onto him. "Fuer, it's so rare that we're all able to eat together, don't leave so quickly." This. Zhao Fu didn't know what to say, so he could only say, "Don't worry, Grandpa. I'm just going to the bathroom." After hearing this, his grandpa smiled and pointed, saying, "The bathroom's over there." Zhao Fu nodded and left the table while everyone else continued to laugh and eat. After relieving himself, just as Zhao Fu opened the bathroom door, a figure quickly darted in and seductively smiled as she looked at Zhao Fu. Seeing that it was Mai Zioyan, Zhao Fu's expression became cold as he asked, "What do you want?" Mai Zioyan flirtatiously looked at Zhao Fu, and her graceful body leaned in towards Zhao Fu, but she was stopped by him. Mai Zioyan lightly smiled as she said, "If you keep stopping me, I'll yell out that you're trying to violate me. Let's see how you explain that." After testing Zhao Fu out earlier, Mai Zioyan knew what his personality was like, which was why she was so confident. Zhao Fu could only put his arm down. Looking at the victorious-looking Mai Zioyan hugging his arm and rubbing her large chest against his arm, he said, "Sorry, but I'm not interested in you." Right now, he could only clearly reject her. However, Mai Zioyan did not seem to mind. She continued to hug his arm as she said, "Really now? I'm your cousin's girlfriend, I don't believe that as a man you're not excited by this situation." After saying this, Mai Zioyan's hand snaked towards Zhao Fu's crotch. Zhao Fu immediately grabbed her hand and said, "If you want power or money, with my help, Zhao Jun will be able to provide you with those things. You don't need to do this." Mai Zioyan snorted and said, "If it wasn't to get close to you, there's no way I would be his girlfriend. He's not even as good as a single hair on your body, how could I want someone like him?" Zhao Fu felt quite surprised. At first, he had thought that this woman wanted power and wealth, but in actuality, her target was him. As such, he said in a cold voice, "Just who are you?" Mai Zioyan retracted her hand and stroked Zhao Fu's chest as she said, "I'm a member of the White Lotus Society, we want to form a partnership with Great Kin." White Lotus Society? Zhao Fu felt that this name was somewhat familiar, but he could not remember much about it. However, Zhao Fu did not like such methods, so he immediately refused, saying, "Sorry, I don't want to work together with you." At that moment, just as Zhao Fu finished speaking, the bathroom door was once again opened and another figure walked in. It was Zheng Zhao. Seeing Zheng Zhao walk in, Zhao Fu immediately tried to push Mai Zioyan away, but Mai Zioyan looked at Zheng Zhao and said, "Hurry up and attend to the Lord." Zheng Zhao gritted her teeth and looked at Mai Zioyan as she reluctantly walked over to Zhao Fu and squatted down, reaching for his pants. Zhao Fu felt quite confused, he had never thought that Mai Zioyan and Zheng Zhao were working together. However, looking at Zheng Zhao's expression, he felt that she was being forced. Zhao Fu stopped Zheng Zhao, and she looked up at him with a trace of gratitude in her eyes. However, Mai Zioyan's expression became icy, and she lightly smiled and said, "Looks like the Lord wants to do it in here. Let's attend to him together." Hearing her words, Zheng Zhao bit her lips and lowered her head, taking off her dress. Her white skin and lower body were revealed, she was not wearing any panties. She then took off her bra, revealing her full breasts. Mai Zioyan flirtatiously smiled at Zhao Fu and pulled up her skirt, revealing her lower body, while pulling down on her blouse, revealing a pair of large rabbits. She was not wearing any underwear at all. 530 White Lotus Society. After pulling down her clothes, Mai Zioyan wrapped her arms around Zhao Fu's neck and leaned in towards him. Her red lips were incredibly close to Zhao Fu, with only a few centimeters between them, and Zhao Fu could smell her fragrant breath. Zheng Zhao lightly hugged Zhao Fu from behind, causing her large chest to press against Zhao Fu's back. This sensation was quite exceptional. "Lord, act quickly, or we'll be discovered by them. Right now, I'm your younger cousin's girlfriend, while Zheng Zhao is your older cousin's fiancé. I'm sure it'll feel great doing us together." Mai Zioyan flirtatious smiled as she seduced Zhao Fu. Because her body was pressed against Zhao Fu's body, she could clearly feel some changes, and she lightly moaned, causing her face to blush as she moved her lips towards Zhao Fu's. However, Zhao Fu stretched out his arms and stopped her. At that moment, he heard his grandpa's voice from outside, "Fuer, it's been a while, are you alright in there?" Zhao Fu hurriedly told his grandpa that he was fine and that he was doing a number 2. After his grandpa left, he said to the women, "You can let go now, I'll consider working with the White Lotus Society." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Mai Zioyan was so happy that she couldn't help but kiss Zhao Fu as he said, "Lord, we belong to you from today onwards." Zheng Zhao also breathed a sigh of relief and let go of Zhao Fu before quickly putting on her clothes. At that moment, Zhao Fu's grandpa's voice once again sounded out from outside, and Mai Zioyan also let go of Zhao Fu and tidied her clothes. Zhao Fu left first, with the two women coming back to the table afterward. The table became lively again. Zhang Zhao said that she wasn't feeling very well, so she returned to her room while Mai Zioyan continued to secretly flirt with Zhao Fu. After a while, they finally finished eating, and Zhao Fu returned to his own villa and ordered people to bring him information on the White Lotus Society. He had some impression of the White Lotus Society, but because he couldn't remember what it was, he took this opportunity to do some research on it. Proxy leader, here is the information you want. The Ying family was one of the 5 great families, so it was easy for the Ying family to collect information. Zhao Fu took the documents handed over by Mugilin and looked through them seriously. An hour later, he more or less understood what sort of faction the White Lotus Society was. No wonder why it seemed so familiar, it was in many television shows and movies. The White Lotus Society was a secretive movement that began during the Tang Dynasty. It originated from the Pure Land school of Buddhism and was founded by Huiyuan. Huiyuan, Liu Yiman, and others created the White Lotus sect to pray to Buddha together, and their followers gradually increased and followed their example. During the Southern Song Dynasty, the monk Mao Zedong built on their foundations and re-established the White Lotus Society. Because the White Lotus Society originated from Buddhism, many of its doctrines were similar to those from Buddhism, but as time passed, it gradually became a famous cult. Its doctrines were quite simple and easy to understand, and they were usually accepted by the lower-class people. As such, the White Lotus Society often led rebellions of the ordinary people. During the Yuan and Ming dynasties, many of the rebellions were started by the White Lotus Society. During the start of the Qin dynasty, it became a secret anti-Qin group and was bloodily suppressed by Great Qin. Apart from the Taoist and Buddhist sects, very few sects or societies had survived for so long. For example, Peace Road, created by Zhang Zhao and the God-worshipping society, had only lasted for brief periods in history. As for why it was called a cult and was suppressed by many dynasties, it was because it could cause both rebellions and peace, allowing it to perform 2 functions in society. During peaceful times, the White Lotus Society could do what the Buddhist and Taoist sects could not do and filled in the gaps that were lacking, which was why they had survived even now. However, whenever things went bad or society fell into chaos, the White Lotus Society would act against the doctrines of Taoism and Buddhism and lead the lower-class people in rebellions. That was why the White Lotus Society was different from ordinary sects. There was no dynasty that liked a society or sect that regularly caused uprisings. Most of the dynasties chose to bloodily suppress such sects. The White Lotus Society was usually suppressed or destroyed by the various dynasties. After all, no dynasty tolerated such an existence. Of course, Zhao Fu didn't like this sort of society either. No nation liked people who regularly caused rebellions, so he too would suppress such existences and not allow them to exist. After all, such a society would make a nation quite unstable, and it would be best to get rid of such a threat. However, since the White Lotus Society was able to survive the suppression of so many dynasties and had not been fully destroyed, that meant that it had power and the potential for development. Right now, their circumstances were quite similar to Great Qin's. Great Qin was viewed as an enemy by the various dynasties and factions, but the difference was that those factions were afraid of Great Qin, while they only saw the White Lotus Society as a nuisance. As such, Zhao Fu considered the possibility of working together. After all, they had common enemies, but he could not work too closely with them. After all, he didn't want rebels to stay within Great Qin. Zhao Fu took out his phone and called the number that Mai Zioyan had slipped him earlier, and she quickly picked up. Hello? How are you, my lord? Have you told Great Qin's legatee about what I asked you about? Is he willing to work together? He's willing, but do you have the authority to discuss the specifics? Zhao Fu was willing to work together for now, as this would reduce the pressure that Great Qin was bearing and cause some trouble for the various dynasty legatees. Mai Zioyan replied, Lord, you must be kidding. How could I have the authority to discuss such an important matter? I'll let our saintess know, and she'll talk to you about it. After hanging up, Zhao Fu waited for a while, after which his phone rang. It was an unknown number. An incredibly captivating voice came through. Zhao Fu knew that this was most likely the White Lotus Society's saintess. After talking about the specifics of their cooperation, such as what each side would provide and what each side would gain, both of them were quite satisfied. Great Qin primarily wanted to destroy the various dynasty legatees and large factions. Even if he did not work together with the White Lotus Society, Zhao Fu would do this. The White Lotus Society had people in every region within China's territory, and even though there were not many of them in every region, the information that they collected was quite comprehensive. They would be able to provide intelligence during key moments and help Great Qin during battles. This allowed Great Qin to cast its gaze not only on the northern side but all of China's territory within the Heaven Awakened world. After talking, Zhao Fu put down his phone in satisfaction. Just as he was about to enter the Heaven Awakened world, his phone rang again. Zhao Fu looked at the screen and saw that it was from Mai Zioyan, so he picked up. Lord, I'm so glad that you're willing to work together with us. Now, I belong to you, so do you want me to go over and serve you? Back then, there was a response from you and from me, and I really want Lord to do me right now. 531 Zhang Zhao. Hearing that incredibly lewd voice, Zhao Fu felt quite frustrated and replied, I have things to do. Zhao Fu had long since wanted to return to the Heaven Awakened world because he had already spent too much time in the real world. He wanted to go back and check on Great Qin's progress. Mai Zioyan felt a bit disappointed, but she understood that now that Great Qin and the White Lotus Society were working together, there were many things for him to take care of. She said, in that case, my lord, call me when you're free, I'll come over and keep you company at any time. Hearing this, Zhao Fu couldn't help but sigh and think of his grandpa's family. No matter what, they were his blood relations and only family. Thinking about this, Zhao Fu felt quite troubled. On one hand, he wanted to cut them off and not have any more to do with them. However, he felt that he could not do this, not only for his grandpa and grandma but also for his deceased mother. Can't you just be with Zhao Jun? Zhao Fu asked as he did not want to have that kind of relationship with her. However, Mai Zioyan coyly replied, no way, my lord. I'm your woman now and will only serve you, how could I be his woman? Also, don't worry. I haven't let him touch me, and my body only belongs to you. Now that she had finally developed that intimacy between them, how could Mai Zioyan just give up? She knew what Zhao Fu's personality was like, and if something happened between her and Zhao Fu, it would bring great benefits to the White Lotus Society. Zhao Fu didn't know what to say, so after saying a few more words, he quickly hung up. However, his phone rang yet again. It was another unknown number. Zhao Fu picked up and heard Zhang Zhao, who said, Zhao Fu, are you able to talk for a moment? Zhao Fu replied that he was, as he felt quite curious as to why she would call him. You're most likely working with them, right? In that case, I will also become your woman. I will serve you diligently, and I'll do anything you want. However, can you ask them to let my family go? Zhang Zhao said as she sniffled. Zhao Fu immediately realized why Zhang Zhao was like this. She was being threatened with her family. This was not a big deal, so Zhao Fu agreed to her request. Thank you so much, Zhang Zhao said gratefully. Zhao Fu did not mind, and just as he was about to hang up and enter the Heaven Awakened world, Zhang Zhao said with some hesitation, I think it's best that I break up with your cousin and go over to serve you. After all, I'm your woman, and it would be bad to stay by another man's side. Hearing this, Zhao Fu felt quite speechless. After thinking about it, he said, you like him, don't you? Just keep being with him. I like your cousin, but I'm your woman now, and my body belongs to you. In actuality, if possible, I'd rather be your woman because you can protect me and family. I don't want to be treated like an ant by others. Zhang Zhao felt quite terrible and couldn't help but cry. Zhao Fu once again fell silent. Back when Zhang Zhao had been snatched over by the Ying family, no one had dared to resist, and she was now being blackmailed by the White Lotus Society and was still unable to resist. That was the tragedy of the week and why Zhao Fu was determined to continuously become more powerful at all costs. Can I be your woman? You don't have to worry about my body not being pure. I've only kissed your cousin a few times, and I'm still a virgin, she said, a pleading tone in Zhang Zhao's voice. Zhao Fu didn't know what to do about this, so he replied, I'll take care of your family. Zhang Zhao happily smiled and said, then I'll be your woman from now on. Zhao Fu felt quite troubled. Zhang Zhao was engaged to his cousin, and just as he wanted to say something, he heard his cousin through the phone, who said, Jia, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Zhao Fu's cousin walked into the room and asked caringly what had happened. Zhao Fu hung up and shook his head, putting this matter aside and entering the Heaven Awakened world. It was already the next day in the Heaven Awakened world, and Zhao Fu sat in a hall as he looked through various reports. Great Qin's army had been quite successful, and everything had gone according to plan. The army had spread out from Great Qin quite quickly, and the rate at which they cleared villages became much faster. The villages had no opportunity to resist them, as Great Qin's strength was enough to completely suppress them. In just a single day, they had obtained a large amount of resources and money. They had also obtained 30,000 people, which was a shocking number. With this sort of speed, Zhao Fu estimated that it would take a month to completely sweep through the Forest of Horrors. When that time came, Great Qin would have a solid grasp over the Forest of Horrors, making it Great Qin's first cornerstone. Apart from clearing these villages, Zhao Fu also had people watch some player villages. Right now, the players were all moving en masse, gathering into groups of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to cross the void zones. With how dangerous void zones were, it would be difficult to cross without many people. However, even with so many people, they would suffer heavy losses passing through the void zone, and only a small portion of them would successfully reach another region. That was why many players had stayed within the Forest of Horrors. Those who had stayed held on to a small trace of hope that their villages were too remote and that given how big the Forest of Horrors was, Greatkin would not find them. Some were unwilling to let go of their resources. After all, they had developed here for a long time, so they were unwilling to leave. Of course, only a minority of factions decided to stay. Most of the factions knew the consequences of offending Greatkin and wisely did not dare to continue staying. Even if they took the risk of crossing the void zones, it would be better than staying here and waiting for death. Zhao Fu did not bother chasing after the players who had left, as it was too late. As such, he placed his gaze on the players who had stayed within the Forest of Horrors. Zhao Fu sent assassins to investigate the player villages. They did not have much to do anyway, so they undertook that mission. After a day or so, Greatkin's assassins had some results and discovered some player villages. They also discovered that some people from Soldier Alliance had not left. Soldier Alliance had been the largest player faction in Soldier Forest, and now, it existed in name only. It was not just Soldier Alliance but also the Holy Light Group and some other factions that had been destroyed or heavily wounded. The larger families were able to survive this disaster due to their foundations, but some of the newer factions became much weaker. After all, they were formed by players, and once they were hit heavily, they would immediately collapse. 532 Blue Star. Back when Zhao Fu established Heaven's Choice, he had a decent relationship with Soldier Alliance because of Wu Qingnian. However, as Zhao Fu's status rose and he became Greatkin's legatee's representative, the relationship between them became colder. Zhao Fu also knew that Dong Junhui was interested in Wu Qingnian and did not give him much face. Dong Junhui had thought that Zhao Fu was Wu Qingnian's subordinate, so he had treated Heaven's Choice quite courteously and helped as much as possible. Of course, with Greatkin's power, there was not much that they needed his help with. However, after Zhao Fu's status had suddenly changed, Dong Junhui's attitude towards him completely changed, as he most likely saw him as a competitor now. Dong Junhui's attitude towards Heaven's Choice had also changed. Soldier Alliance had joined the movement to resist Greatkin, and perhaps Dong Junhui thought that because of his relationship with Zhao Fu would show him mercy. However, Zhao Fu's eyes were incredibly cold as he ordered Greatkin's assassins, kill everyone in Soldier Alliance. If there are any core members, feed them reality fruits then kill them. Also, do this for all of the large factions. If any of the core members remained, make sure they die a true death. Since they had been heartless, Zhao Fu would not show mercy either by killing them and giving their core members a true death. Even though they were of the same race and were all players, Zhao Fu did not feel guilty. That was their punishment for offending Greatkin. If it wasn't for the fact that they did not have many reality fruits, Zhao Fu would execute everyone who had participated to show them the true terror of Greatkin. Yes. The assassin said before quickly leaving. Day after day passed, and it became colder and colder. All of the leaves on trees had fallen off, and the grass also withered. There was now a thin layer of frost on the ground, and it was now late winter. The colder temperatures caused Greatkin's army to slow down, as armies were not suited to fighting during winter. However, Zhao Fu did not want to stop because things were also tough for the other side. Greatkin's soldiers had high cultivations, so they fared better in the cold and had an advantage over ordinary people during winter. On the other hand, Zhao Fu did not want to waste time either. Time was of the essence, and they could not waste time. It was essential that they gained full control over the Forest of Horrors as soon as possible. 4 days later, Li Wen came before Zhao Fu, and seeing him, Zhao Fu grinned. After all, Li Wen's appearance meant that they had enough soldier souls to form another general armament. Here, Your Majesty. Li Wen also smiled as he delivered the soldier souls to Zhao Fu. He understood how important they were for Greatkin. Zhao Fu received the soldier souls and immediately ordered people to bring Mangekyō to an empty area. After hearing that another general armament was about to be formed, many people came to watch from a distance. Zhao Fu fused the 100 soldier souls into 10 divine soldier souls before handing them to Mangekyō, who was excited. Mangekyō respectfully received these divine soldier souls. The 10 divine soldier souls gave off a faint white light and automatically flew into the sky, forming a circle around Mangekyō as they spread out. The 10 orbs started to give off blinding white light as the soldier images within them turned into traces of violet chi as their roars became more powerful, turning into a corporeal pressure. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion sounded out, causing the sky to tremble as the 10 massive orbs of light seemed to call out to each other. The traces of violet aura within the orbs trembled as a terrifying power spread out. Immediately, the clouds swirled as the sky dimmed and a massive gale brewed. Countless trees swayed as rocks were brought into the sky, and it was as if a disaster was about to descend. Boom. Within the sky, a massive sound like something shattering rang out as a violet star giving off a brilliant light slowly descended, emanating a boundless aura. At that moment, countless ability users, espers, and legatees were given a big shock, and they quickly went outside and looked towards the north. Their expressions were extremely unsightly as they saw that another general star was returning, and it was once again in the northern side. One of Great Kin's people was definitely awakening his general star. This was the 5th general star that Great Kin had unlocked. Apart from Great Kin, only Great Zhu's Zhongzia had undone his fate seal. No other dynasty legatee had been able to achieve this yet, which was quite shameful. All of them were losing to Great Kin in power, fate, and reputation. This meant that they were all inferior to Great Kin, making all of the dynasty legatees feel quite furious. The northern side's various factions, that had all been heavily injured, looked at the star in the sky and could only heavily sigh. They had no way of stopping Great Kin, and they had only slightly recovered after being heavily injured. They were not able to threaten Great Kin at all. Back at Great Kin, as the violet star slowly descended and gave off a powerful air of suppression, Mastermind raised his large saber and roared, exploding out with a powerful aura. The ground beneath him cracked as traces of a silver aura continuously rose out of his body. Boom! Silver arcs of lightning flashed as a silver pillar of light shot into the sky and hit the violet star. A massive explosion rang out as the violet star trembled and slowly started to become silver. Soon, the violet star had become completely silver and gave off a bright silver light and an incredibly sharp feeling. Ha! Mastermind roared as his veins bulged, and countless traces of a blood-red aura rushed out as the ground continued to crack. Rumble! Bolts of lightning started to descend from the sky, giving off a destructive aura and causing the hairs of everyone nearby to stand on end, feeling an instinctive fear. Suddenly, the sky once again trembled as 3 black stars also descended. Now that there were 4 stars in the sky, the pressure they gave off felt corporeal, and it weighed down on all countless creatures below. Seeing this, many people felt quite surprised, because this was not a normal general star awakening but a special method that Great Kin had used before. The stars started to fuse, and the terrifying aura became even more intense, causing many creatures to shiver. The lightning in the sky became even more intense as if it wanted to destroy everything. The scene seemed like a cultivator undergoing a lightning tribulation. The target of most of these bolts of lightning was Mastermind, but they were all blocked by his blood-red aura. The 4 stars in the sky fused together as a faint blue light shined. Gradually, the blue light became brighter and brighter, and finally, the 3 new stars fused into the original star, creating a blue star. 533 formation-breaking soldiers. This massive blue star gave off an intense blue light that covered the ground. The dark clouds in the sky scattered, as the blue starlight seemed to have a piercing effect that seemed to tear through the sky like countless sharp swords. This was one of the 13 general stars, the Great Gate Star. The Great Gate Star's focus was right and wrong, and it was a general star with extremely great judgment. It was a star that focused on cooperation and was quite ferocious when it came to fighting. It would never retreat and was an incredibly terrifying general star. The Great Gate Star gave off a blue pillar of starlight with Mastermind at the center, who started to show changes. The blue starlight continuously entered his body, causing his aura to become more and more powerful. The blood-red aura from before gradually disappeared, and an incredibly piercing blue aura continuously streamed out from within Mastermind's body. The pillar of blue starlight gradually became smaller as the saber in Mastermind's hand became blue-colored. Light swirled around on the blade as the words Great Gate were engraved on it. The pillar of blue starlight disappeared, and the blue star in the sky gradually faded as well. The abnormal signs also disappeared as the surroundings quietened down, but everything around looked quite disorderly. Zhao Fu cancelled his king's domain and smiled as he asked to see the blue saber. Mastermind's saber had already been an epic rank weapon, so its stats were quite good. Great Gate Saber, Grade, Legendary, Stats, Strength plus 30, Intelligence plus 20, Constitution plus 16, Agility plus 16, Description, a epic rank saber that fused with the Great Gate Star's power, forming the Great Gate Saber, a general armament. The Great Gate Saber had fairly high strength, while its constitution and agility were relatively lower. This was because every general armament's stats were related to the armament's general star. The Great Gate Saber's first 5 effects were the same as the other general armaments, and Zhao Fu was quite curious about Mastermind's soldier aura formation and what it would be. Next, Zhao Fu looked at the Great Gate Saber's 6th special effect. Formation-breaking soldiers. Soldiers in this state will have extremely powerful offensive capabilities while all of their other attributes will become slightly weaker. They will also have the ability to break through formations and can even use their life force to obtain extreme power from the Great Gate Star, becoming incredibly terrifying soldiers. This effect leaned more towards offensive attacks, which meant that these soldiers would specialize in destruction. Zhao Fu was quite pleased with the formation-breaking effect, as there were many formations in the Heaven Awakened world, and with this ability, they would be able to suppress such formations. Zhao Fu felt quite pleased as he handed the Great Gate Saber back to Mangekyō, and the other generals all came up to congratulate him. Zhao Fu smiled before returning to the Great Qin city. Elsewhere, all of the ability users and espers looked away, while all of the dynasty legatees felt quite angry and ordered people to quickly find ways to undo fate seals. They did not wish to fall behind Great Qin. Elsewhere within the Forest of Horrors, Great Qin's army continuously took down indigenous resident villages, gaining many residents for Great Qin. There were many outlanders among them, and as long as they surrendered, Zhao Fu was willing to take them in and treat them as Great Qin's subjects. There were now fewer and fewer player villages. Those who had held on to hope had been scared off by Great Qin's slaughter and could only escape to other regions. Right now, Great Qin's focus was on sweeping out the Forest of Horrors. Because of the isolation barriers on all sides, Zhao Fu did not have any way to leave, so he had his soldiers continue to sweep through the Forest of Horrors. "Captain. We found a basic village ahead with around 400 people," a soldier said to his captain. The captain happily laughed and patted his shoulder before turning and saying to the rest of the soldiers, "Brothers, we have more prey. After taking down this village, we can go back and claim military points." Everyone looked quite excited. In order to motivate the soldiers, Zhao Fu gave out abundant rewards, and those who took down more villages would have better rewards. "Captain. Let's hurry and act," the soldiers all said. The captain nodded and said, "Let's see if this village is dangerous. Afterward, we'll start moving." The soldiers all nodded, came close to the village, and observed it before moving. Swish, swish, swish. Powerful arrows tore through the air, piercing into the villagers' bodies. Pained cries sounded out as the working villagers were all given a big fright and ran into the village. Charge. Seeing that the first wave of arrows had killed dozens of villagers and that the village had lost any power to retaliate, the captain immediately gave the order to charge. The 1,000 soldiers raised the weapons and obeyed, rushing towards the village with a ferocious aura. The village only had 400 villagers, and now that dozens of them had been killed, they had no power to retaliate at all. Seeing so many soldiers charging over, they felt incredibly terrified. The men told the women and children to quickly run while they gripped their tools and charged at the soldiers. It was a pity that they would be immediately slashed to death by Great Qin's soldiers. The 1,000 soldiers quickly surrounded the village, and the villagers looked at the soldiers in fear while the children burst into tears. Zhao Fu looked at the roughly 300 people ahead and said, "Surrender to Great Qin or we'll kill all of you. Don't think that you can resist Great Qin." Seeing that 100 or so people had been killed in an instant and that those people had been the main fighting force of the village, none of the remaining villagers dared to resist. "Sir, don't kill me. I'm willing to surrender," a weak-looking youth said as he kneeled down in fear. Seeing Great Qin's ferocious soldiers, the other villages knew that if they didn't surrender, they would most likely be killed as well. They knew how terrifying these soldiers were, so they also knelt down and did not dare to resist. The captain laughed in satisfaction. "Brothers, clean up the battlefield and relocate the village. Then, we'll go back." The other soldiers looked quite excited as they went and collected everything of value before conquering and relocating the village, bringing the terrified villagers with them back to the Great Qin city. "General Sun. We've discovered an advanced village ahead with roughly 5,000 people, and it's a Zhangnu village," one of the soldiers respectfully reported to Sun Wu. Sun Wu used to be the mayor of a basic town, and after submitting to Great Qin, he had joined the army and become a general. Hearing this, Sun Wu nodded and smiled. If he took down this advanced village, they would receive great rewards and also be looked on favorably by His Majesty. In fact, he might even be able to obtain a city lord seal in the future. As such, Sun Wu gave the order for a few teams to group up with his. Soon, 20,000 or so soldiers gathered. Their arrangement was quite comprehensive. There were shield bearers all the way to cavalry. In order to attack an advanced village like this, they needed to have different types of soldiers in order to reduce the injuries and casualties suffered. 534 Conquest's ancient fallen clans like the Zhangnu clan had powerful battle intent and resisted greatly. Only by instantly destroying their confidence could they be subdued. Sun Wu thought about it and had 600 or so soldiers take off their armor and pretend to attack as bandits. They would set up an ambush and bait the soldiers out. Once the soldiers died, the remaining residents would not be able to retaliate anymore. After making this decision, Sun Wu had the soldiers carry out the plan. The 600 or so soldiers quickly went to attack that Zhangnu village, using flaming arrows that lit up buildings and animal pens. Most ancient fallen clans raised livestock, so the flames easily caused a lot of chaos. The Zhangnu village was able to respond quite quickly. Soon, 1,000 or so Zhangnu soldiers rushed out, and seeing these Zhangnu soldiers, Great Qin's 600 or so soldiers immediately turned and ran. The ancient fallen clans were quite powerful, and they were the ones usually bullying others, not them being bullied by others. As such, Seeing how lacking these 600 people's equipment was and how weak they seemed, their bloodlust was aroused, and they charged towards Great Gin's soldiers. Great Gin's 600 or so soldiers quickly ran while the 1,000 Zangnu soldiers madly chased after them. Soon, they led the Zangnu soldiers to the ambush. The place of the ambush was not too far away, as Sun Wu was worried that the Zangnu people would not chase too far, so the ambush location was quite close. As soon as the Zangnu soldiers ran some distance away from the village, Great Gin's soldiers would be able to attack them. Fire! Sun Wu ordered as the sounds of the air being torn could be heard, and countless arrows whistled towards the Zangnu soldiers. The Zangnu soldiers were completely caught off guard, and as the arrows descended, most of them were instantly killed. Those who survived immediately turned and ran after seeing this scene, but they were hit by another wave of arrows. Very soon, they had all been killed. Next, Sun Wu led all of Great Gin's soldiers to the Zangnu village. He first had the archers shoot flaming arrows into the village, lighting up many houses and causing the Zangnu village to become quite chaotic. The cavalry then ferociously pierced into the village like a sharp spear and started a massacre. Their spears tore through the Zangnu people's chests, causing blood to fly everywhere. The other soldiers followed behind them and also started to attack. The Zangnu people did their best to resist, but their attempts were futile. 3 Zangnu people attacked a Great Kin soldier, but they were split in half by Great Kin's soldier with a single chop. Most of Great Kin's soldiers that had gathered were stage 1 soldiers, and they could insta-kill these Zangnu people, who had low cultivations. In fact, even if Sun Wu did not use any trickery and simply charged at the village, with the soldiers' high cultivations, they would be able to easily massacre the Zangnu people. However, Sun Wu followed Great Gin's policy, which was to ensure victory with as little costs as possible. The situation quickly came within their control, and the Zangnu people were one-sidedly massacred. Soon, the 20,000 soldiers easily controlled this Zangnu advanced village. Seeing that the flames were becoming bigger and bigger, Sun Wu ordered the soldiers to bring the captives in order for them to not be surrounded by the flames. After coming outside of the village, they counted the captives and found that there were 2,723 in total,